Welcome, Lund loyalists, YouTubers watching on John Lund Unleashed and the Bay Area Sports Collective, those watching on X and Instagram and listening on Apple and Spotify. It's John Lund Unleashed and JohnLundUnleashed.com. Brought to you by Riopel Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center. Right now featuring amazing stem cell technology. For all your pain and for the guys, check out the latest in low T and testosterone therapy to make you feel like yourself again. Riopel Cosmetic Surgery and Laser Center at riopelcosmetic.com. Now, all juiced up and ready to go. Here's Johnny.
Yes, good morning. Episode 92. It is a Wednesday, only one more day until March Madness. One more day until March Madness for episode 92. Thank you for joining us. Maybe you're watching on John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. That would be tremendous. Please give us a follow, a like, and make sure you have your alerts on because we're on all the time, not just 8 a.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday, and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Of course, Bay Area Sports Collective. Make sure that you are following there as well on YouTube or on Instagram at John Lund Radio. In fact, you know what? I did not start that one, so nobody on Instagram's like, no, we're not here. Yes, you are. Now you are. Got Instagram rolling as well at John Lund Radio on X and Twitter. So make sure that if you're on the run, you can take us with you on that one as well. Facebook, it's my personal Facebook, John Lund Radio. And also you can follow along there, John Lund Unleashed. Please do that on Facebook. We have a show page there. And I don't know, I was screwing around, so I threw it on LinkedIn today. I'd never done that before. So maybe I'm annoying people, or maybe people are like, whoa, all right. Very, very cool. So that is the Bay Area Sports Collective. You see that on my left there, right off my left, right there, Bay Area Sports Collective. Please make sure that you are subscribing there because that's where my show is, and Tom Tolbert's and Polymac and Creative Tony. So, and by the way, they're having an opening day on the 27th. They're having an opening day party, and I'm going to get you details to that. So we're going to do all those things, but we'll take roll call in just a second. Roll call if you're in the YouTube chat, or maybe you're in the Twitch chat or one of these other places. It all comes through in one place, so you can say hello. If you are new to the community, say hi. We got a great community going on. It's growing every single day. We're getting close to 5,000. So thank you so much for doing that in just a short period of time. It is an awesome place to hang out. Your opinions, everybody's opinion is welcome. We have a great time in that chat room. So if you've never been in there, please make sure you say good morning and hello and become part of the community. It is absolutely great. The chalkboard is on my right, as you see, episode 92. So the Golden State bounced back last night for the Warriors. If you were a betting man, I'm not very good at betting at all. I'm not. But in situations like last night, it was very obvious, and I told you this yesterday on the show. It was a disappointing loss with Steph. The previous night to Denver, who decided, now everybody's freaking out about this. It's been going on in the NBA for years, man. The Nuggets didn't want to show the Warriors anything. They were a 3-6 matchup. They didn't want to show them Jokic at this point, even though we know what Jokic does, or Murray. They didn't want them to get familiar with him again, and so they didn't play those guys, and you didn't really hear anything from a couple days later. The media went, hey, those guys didn't play. It's like, yeah, if it was the Lakers and the Knicks or something, you would have noticed, but it took like 24 hours for the national media to go, hey, you know, when that game was being played out way out west there in San Francisco, Jokic didn't play, and Murray didn't play. Did you know that? It's like, yeah, we knew that because that's what the NBA does. Anyway, point is, they bounced back against Giannis and the Bucks, and Draymond Green makes a case for Defensive Player of the Year, which I wasn't really thinking of. But then Victor Wembanyama went down, and so I guess he does have a point. We'll play that out for you. Playoff Jimmy makes an appearance. The case for the 49ers is actually Vegas still has the Niners as the favorites in the NFC West despite all the losses. And while we focus so much on the losses, and for good reason, and I have talked about a couple in general that have bothered me, I've also told you that a lot of those guys just weren't very good. If you look at the numbers and you look at the facts, they trimmed a lot of fat. They trimmed a lot of big names, but they trimmed a lot of talent. So we'll get into that. And plus, a lot of people have been hitting me up on social media. Hey, Lund, what's left? Is there anything that's left? Well, there's a couple of things to that I'll discuss with you. April 1st is the big day. It's the D-Day for Brandon Aiyuk if he is going to be traded. I have steadfastly said in this offseason I just don't see it because of the lack of value. But one thing, and this team has been a hardline stance in the offseason, you don't need me to tell you that, is that Brandon Aiyuk is due a $22.8 million payment on April 1st. And if the Niners really want to get out of it, this is when they would do it. And then that team, and here's another problem with it, that team assumes, as I say, left there on the chalkboard, assumes 4 years and $110 million or $27.5 million on Brandon Aiyuk, and I just don't think that that's a team is going to do that with his injury. The Melvin contract, that's interesting. Bob Melvin, John Shea, who I got to get on the show. I'm a huge fan of John Shea, who's moved from the Chronicle, the national baseball writer, for years and years, has covered the Giants and everything baseball, and is just awesome as a guy and just as a writer. But brought up Bob Melvin's contract, got something to say about that today. Robbie Ray was solid to add on to Verlander. So Ray and Verlander have had great springs, and you know how I feel about spring, but there are things you can take from it way beyond the numbers. So we'll discuss that. The Dodgers are 2-0. What am I going to say? Suzuki walked 5. It was kind of like Yamamoto last year in Japan. I think it was a little too jacked up. Same thing happened, but they beat the Cubs 6-3, so they're 2-0. What a shocker, and they come home. No bet madness. I got a question for you on that. Random things happen throughout the show. If you're new around here, because I look at the chat line, it throws me off. I talk about random things. Then, the way that I look at it is we're driving down the road. We take an exit. We get back on the road. We take an exit. We get back on the road. So that's kind of what happens if you are new around here. But welcome to everybody. First thing we do before we get into all the compelling conversation today and let you see very nice pictures and videos and everything like that, is we give roll call to all the friends and the community. They're in the chat. So John Holmes is here. Good morning. As John Holmes says, congrats to Santa Clara and Stanford NIT wins. There you go. I'll take that. Vernon says, hey, good morning to Hurley Bird as well. Hello, Jeff. Like I said, I owe Jeff an email. I got to get to that. I think I have seen you here, Secret Sauce 83, but if I have not, I love it. Lund! Is that right? With 5 exclamation points. Thank you. John Holmes, I did say, but it is good morning to see you. That is Bay Area Sports Collective, so make sure that you are subscribed to Bay Area Sports Collective one day until March Madness. What is everybody doing for March Madness? Do you got to work? Do you work from home? How do you sneak it all in? Do you fill out a bracket? I am curious if you would indulge me throughout the show today, is exactly how much work you get done, how many brackets you do. Do you do brackets? Do you get into it? Because I have a question near the end of the show that I'm going to throw at you after we get to everything. Tacky is here this morning. Mike, it is tremendous to see you, my friend. Jake, good morning to you. Jesus, hello, Jesus. Very nice to see you. What else? Joy is a absolute joy. As I'm surrounded. Oh, I've got a 6-1 at home today too, and she's being really good, and she's staying in her room. But man, I can't get that. I can't get sick. Can't get sick. Ernesto Ryan, SGA Sports Channel. Very good to see you. Skaters on baseball. Let's see. What do we got? A Lund Day segment. Explain that to me. What do we need? What do we got to do, man? I'm ready for that. Let's see. Let's do it. Let's get going. What else do we have today? Who else do we have today? Taylor, it is nice to see you. Good morning, y'all. Very nice. Good to see you, my friend. I've seen you before, I believe, but if not, welcome. Mark Graves, it is tremendous to see you. Hello. Exactly. And I can tell you, and we're going to get into this to start the show. So before I was going to go off on a tangent here about that game last night, but I'm going to do it to start the show. So let's get through it. Sports Girl for Life, absolutely great to see you this morning. Good morning. And again, if I don't get to you, I will throughout the day. I will see new people. Good morning, Franco. Franco is one of the best. Hello, Franco. Good to see you. 49ers faithful. Nice to see you this morning. So a lot of people in the room today. Good morning. And again, if you are new, please make yourself known and we will say hello to you. And we want to welcome you to the community. Hello, Mary Peters. Good morning. Yo. Good morning. All right. Let's get to things this morning. And again, welcome to everybody for episode 92. However you are watching, all we ask, spread the word. And make sure, one more thing, JohnLundUnleashed.com. I owe you a column today, which I will write. I want something compelling to write, so I was waiting on that. But I do have something today that I will write about. So again, that will be at JohnLundUnleashed.com, accompanied by a short video. So that's why you got to have your alerts on. One more quick thing that's self-serving. My son is writing for a place called, I don't bring him up too much, so just you got to bear with me for just 1 second. There's myself. That's not good. It's called Devil's Digest, at Devil's Digest. If you would take a look there today, he is the beat writer now for Arizona State football, who finished, 7th in the country last year. And his first piece is a cool one. It's on Jordan Tyson, their All-American wide receiver who actually missed the playoff games. But Jordan Tyson, great piece by George. It's his first paid gig, by the way. He was writing all his stuff, and he went to the Super Bowls, we know, and everything. But that was with the Arizona State broadcast program, Cronkite broadcast program. So I pay them. They don't pay us. But Devil's Digest, he came back from the Super Bowl. And for those who have watched for a long time on the channel, we had him on, and he was doing the walk and talk from Radio Row and all that kind of stuff. And Devil's Digest saw it. And they're like, this kid ain't bad. Her could use some help, but, this kid ain't bad. And they bring him on. So that's his first paid piece. So I called him last night, right? Not to go off on a random part of the show already, but I called him last night, and I said, great piece. Loved it. He was all excited. Dad, what do you think? What do you think? So I read through the thing and gave him a couple of nice suggestions. But overall, you want to be like, hey, dude, first piece, great, great, great. And so what my excitement level is, you're getting paid for the first time, not by me. Like, he's had jobs before and everything like that, but this is his chosen profession. And so he's at Arizona State. He's a junior at the Cronkite Broadcast School down there, and only 2 more semesters that I have to pay for. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, long story short is he writes his first piece. And so then I say to him last night, it's like 10, 11 o'clock. I said, cool. Well, do you get paid by the piece, or how do they pay you, or what does it do, and how much you make? And he goes, Dad, he goes, I don't know. I haven't been able, I just don't, he basically said, I don't have the balls to ask him about payment yet. I'm like, dude, that's the point. I'm like, I know you're learning and everything, and you haven't been paid, but they said it was a paid position, which is why he left doing he was going to be the baseball guy for Arizona State for the Cronkite School, and wasn't going to get paid for that. That's an internship. I get it. It's good to put on your resume. But he took this Devil's Digest thing so he could get paid, and he goes, yeah, I haven't asked him about payment. I'm like, you wrote a piece already. Like, you have to agree to what you're getting paid. Now you're employed. Now they have all the leverage. Like, you're employed. You're already writing. You already quit your other gig, and you haven't got. He's got a lot to learn. He's got to take an economics class. He's got to take a finance class. My Lord. I mean, it not to go off on a tangent here already with the random part, which is the bottom part of the show, but honestly, in high school, rather than some of these stupid things that you're never going to learn, like, I don't know how many times you use algebra in your life. I don't know. But, or any of these kind of things. But it's like, what about personal finance? Can we just have a personal finance class in high school? Maybe a personal finance 101 in college, something like a personal finance, a little bit of how to invest, a little bit how to save your money, a little bit, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just personal finance. I'm just looking at him going, not looking at him. We were just talking on the phone. We were FaceTime, but I'm just like, you got to ask him about payment. You got to get paid. Like, that's the whole, you're getting paid. Like, I was excited you were getting paid. Like, you don't understand what this means to me, that you might get paid by someone other than me. It's not going to be a lot. It's just the principle of the thing. All right, let's get going. I did get already asked about bouncing back. And like I said, I'm not a betting man. Well, a little bit. But I'm not good at betting, I guess is what I should say. I'm not good at betting. If you take my bets, and I've said this for years and years and years, if you take my bets and you go the other way, I'm not saying you go buy a house. Maybe you could buy a car. It would be a cheap car, and it would depend on how aggressive you were with your bets. But you could have a few bucks in your pocket. I think suffice to say, you could have a few bucks in your pocket if you just bet against me or what I told you. And yeah, I guess that is betting against me. If what I told you and then you bet the opposite, not a house, certainly not a house where I'm in California, but you could maybe a house. It would be a small house and it would be a small town, but you could maybe get a house. You could certainly get a car. And I'm not saying you could get a Mercedes or something like that, whatever your choice is. But I mean, you could get something. Like, you could buy your college kid a car. There's no question about it. My kid is a little different, but still, maybe not his car. But you could buy a car. I'm certain of it. You could certainly buy a really nice dinner. You could definitely bet on that, but definitely more than a dinner. You could buy a lot. So generally speaking, I'm wrong when it comes to bet. But yesterday I told you, I said, this Golden State Warriors team, if they're worth what we've been talking about since they acquired Jimmy Butler, they'll win tonight. Because that was an embarrassing loss. And sometimes what can happen, and we talked about this, these are human beings. These are not robots that you program and then they come out of the locker room and it's like, we play basketball. They're human beings. And you don't need me to remind you of that, but that's sometimes what happens. So they walk out of the locker room, and you can give me all the analytics and analysts and all these different kind of things. But it was clear on Monday night that they looked at Denver's bench and they said, oh, Jokic is in street clothes and Murray's not even here. Like, are you kidding me? So they had a lackluster effort, lots of turnovers. They weren't focused. They couldn't shoot the basketball. There were all these different things. And Denver walks out of there. And I was surprised at the end because they were within 6 in the fourth quarter and they still couldn't get it done. And Aaron Gordon comes back, and you know the story. We talked about it yesterday. So then yesterday, I'm like, here's what's going to happen. They're going to tighten it down defensively. Draymond Green's going to be pissed off. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to be much more focused, and we're going to see a version of playoff Jimmy. Ding, ding, dingity, ding. That's what happened. Winner, winner. You would have bet against me, and you would have lost for a rare time last night. But I saw this one coming. I saw the focus coming, and what this tells me about the Warriors is this is a team that is going to be dangerous come playoff time. If they had done last night what they had done against Denver and just sucked, oh my God, we don't have Steph. Oh no. And they would have played that way. I'd be like, that's trouble. But Monty Poole wrote this piece, and it's right on the money from last night. It's exactly what I was thinking. The Warriors surely hope to see more of him even before the postseason. That's Monty Poole. Check out his piece at NBC Sports Bay Area. But it's exactly what I was thinking. The fabled legend of playoff Jimmy made an early appearance against the Bucks is exactly what he said. Let me share my screen with you and show you the box score so we can go over what happened last night against Milwaukee and exactly what that means now, because that's a big deal that they get that win last night. So here's the box from last night, and we can go over this whole thing. But whatever against the Bucks. But again, that's a good Bucks team. They got Kuzma, Antetokounmpo, and we're going to talk about that. 5 of 16 for Antetokounmpo. Not a three-point shooter. Did go to the line 15 times, went 10 of 15. But when he scores 20, then it puts a ton of pressure on everybody else. Kuzma's a decent player. Lillard's obviously not what he was, but still, when he comes back to Oakland, he normally torches the Warriors. That wasn't the case last night. 6 of 18, 2 of 9. So that's what they've got going on. But then you look at Jimmy Butler, and again, it's the free throws. It's going to be so invaluable come playoff time. And they call the game differently. We all know that. But Jimmy Butler has earned a reputation around the league. And Jimmy Butler is going to get calls in the playoffs. So there he is, 6 of 13, very efficient. 13 shots, 24 points. 1 of 4 from 3, as we know by now in watching Jimmy enough. He's not a three-point guy. They'll hit one on occasion. So 6 of 13, 11 of 11 from the free throw line, 10 assists, 8 boards. So he almost gets a triple-double last night. Clearly focused. Jimmy Butler, this is the one thing that is so great that they haven't had for a long time, and even when Klay Thompson was around, they just didn't have. When Steph Curry's not in the game, when Steph Curry is not around, when Steph Curry misses a game, there, I got it right on the third time. When Steph Curry misses a game, you're going, okay, where does the ball go? Who's going to – that's why I thought it was confusing that they lost the game Monday night against Denver, because down the stretch I thought to myself, well, the ball is going through Jokic normally down the stretch in the final 5 minutes of a game, and if it's not going through him, then it's going through Murray. And now it's got to be guys like Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr., and I just thought, they're going to have this lead, but the Warriors are going to catch them at the end because they've got different ways to go, and Denver really doesn't. And Denver hit a bunch of key shots. I got to give him credit, but you can see that Jimmy Butler is very, very comfortable being the alpha, being the Batman. It's okay, I got this. And you could just tell. He just changed his mentality. He was asked after the game, and we'll play a cut for you in just a second after we go through the box score from last night, the 104-93 win over Milwaukee. And Steve Kerr was asked a question about it. He's like, yeah, I don't have to talk to him. I don't say, Jimmy, by the way, be playoff Jimmy tonight or be number one option Jimmy tonight. But it's just the way that he does it. And it's the going to the free throw line, 41.6% from the floor. It's not like they tore it up last night, but they were much better from three-ball land, which I think they lost by 4 or 5 in terms of threes, which you times that by, I think it was 6 actually against Denver, times that by 3, 18 points. So that was a major problem. So they were better behind the arc last night. There's no question. But again, 41.6%. What it does show is 39.2% from Milwaukee. You're playing great defense, and Draymond makes his case for Defensive Player of the Year, and I'll play that for you in a minute. And if you go down to Draymond, it just, the numbers, and I saw this posted last night, and that he's not very, 1 of 6 on the floor, 0 of 5 from 3. I don't like 5 threes from Draymond, by the way. You want to shoot that corner 3 in the playoffs? Go for it. Anything else other than that, let's not go overboard. And I know he's better shooting the 3, but I don't need to see it 5 times during a game. But he gets 10 boards, 3 points. It just doesn't show the impact of his game. Defensively, he was tremendous against Giannis last night. Just absolutely great. Moses Moody struggled. Great to see Podziemski. If they don't have Podziemski in the place of Curry last night, they don't win. 6 of 10, 4 of 7, 17 points, 7 boards. He's great on the glass, as we know. So when this team has everybody, and they're going to shorten the rotation. So Santos, who you see there, he's not going to play in the playoffs. Kuminga probably has, since he's come back, maybe his most forced game. And I keep saying that just let the game slow down, let the game come to you, relax. And I think what Kuminga did last night was something that just Butler does naturally. And Kuminga's young, which is okay. Steph's out of the lineup. And we talked about this before he came back. Steph's out of the lineup. I'm going to make things happen. I've got to do more things. And it's not really what Kuminga needs to do. He was frustrated at times last night. You could just kind of tell. So it's not just the shooting, 2 of 10. That doesn't tell the whole story for Kuminga. He gets to the line 6 times. Very nice. But he's just got to relax. His first couple of games, and especially his first game, he just relaxed. He let it come to him. And last night he did not. So he was struggling a little bit there. Nice to get Buddy healed. You don't know which Buddy you're getting. He's kind of like Mo Spates was a few years ago. Like you kind of just, put your finger in your mouth and you put it up and, you kind of test the wind. That's what it is with Buddy Hield. So Buddy got 23 minutes last night because Curry was out, but goes 5 of 7, 4 of 6, 15 points, gives you a little 3-point that you're missing with Steph Curry. But come playoff time, I don't know if Hield is going to be in the rotation because if he's not shooting it, he just gives you nothing other than shooting the basketball. So it's kind of like I said, a couple of years ago with Mo Spates and winning championships. A lot of times Steve Kerr would just throw him out there. And if he could give the offense a boost on a particular night come playoff time, and that's all my references now is we're 12, 13 games away from the playoffs. I'm envisioning this team in the playoffs. That's kind of how I look at all this kind of stuff. So how are the rotations going to work? Who's going to play? A lot of it depends on matchups. There's no question. But in Hield's case, it's just going to be kind of a Mo Spates situation where you look at it and you say, okay, is the stroke on tonight? Because if it's not, he's giving us nothing else. And we got to give somebody else a chance. Gary Payton had been very good against Denver, just okay last night. We'll see what his deal is in the playoffs. He'll definitely have some defensive assignments in the playoffs. So anyway, nice win, nice bounce back. The biggest thing to come out of a couple of things, the biggest things, Jimmy Butler, very comfortable, obviously being the one, and you can see that. And then Draymond Green. So let me stop sharing the screen here for a second because I'm sure you missed my shining face. But let's play a little bit from last night. So here, first and foremost, here's Steve Kerr. And I'm sorry, the camera work here is not great, but here is Steve Kerr talking about Jimmy Butler and how he doesn't have to tell him to step up in a game minus Steph.
When it's time, he'll do it. Tonight it was time. Last night in the comeback, he kind of took over, and so he just does whatever is necessary. And I think it's a good game for us to play actually without Steph because it sort of forces the rest of the team to play a game without him and to play through Jimmy and to see what we've got. So, like I said, I thought it was a big-time win. Brandon played a huge role in it. Such an important stretch, down the stretch, knocking down those threes and offensive rebound. And you see what he means to our team, his anticipation, play after play at both ends.
All right, so there's half Steve Kerr, and I apologize for that. Let's get him off the stage because that was awkward. So bad camera work there. But you get the point of what Steve Kerr said. And it's something I said too, and looking at the box score is Podziemski, if there's a playoff Jimmy, I don't know that there's a playoff Podziemski, but he just has to be solid. And I don't know if Steve Kerr has to sit down with some of these younger guys because you're not worried about Curry clearly or Butler or Draymond or some of the veteran guys. But I think they're not going to go, and Steve brings up a good point at the end of that clip there where those guys are going to carry them to a certain extent. And I would not want to see the Warriors walking into my gym, especially if I'm a younger team. Right now I'll pop up in a second because you know how I am about the bracket. And I'm not talking about the NCAA bracket. I'm obsessed at looking at the NBA bracket every single morning just because I don't want to see the Nuggets opposite the Warriors in a 3-6. They're not winning that series. Now, again, if you're a betting man, what time did I say that? 8:35 a.m. on March 19th. I said they're not beating the Nuggets. That could come back to haunt me because they could, but it's just a terrible matchup all across the board. We saw it the other night. Denver's got to have a massive amount of confidence to walk into Chase and say, yeah, we're not playing Jokic. We're not playing Murray. We're not playing Brown. And guess what? We're going to walk out with a victory. And it really wasn't that difficult. Well, they beat them by 8 or 10. Other than a couple of times the Warriors making some runs at them, it wasn't even that difficult of a game. Now they're going to be different. They're going to be focused, and they're going to be, Jokic is going to be playing. That was just a mental game that Denver screwed with them, didn't play him, and the Warriors went, we'll just throw our shoes out on the court and we'll win. So, yeah, it's not great. But still, you look at the guys that they have that are going to be in the bank. Butler's going to do what he's going to do. Steph's going to do what he's going to do. Draymond's going to do what he's going to do. He hasn't been nearly as hot-headed, by the way, this season. I give him a ton of credit. Nobody talks about that. Everybody talks about Draymond when he seems to be out of control. Nobody talks about him when he seems to be under control. And I don't think over the last couple of weeks, and maybe it coincides with Jimmy, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe I just wasn't paying attention as much before, but Draymond doesn't go after the officials with the veracity that he has in the past. And I think that's a great thing. And I've always been a proponent of saying, look, you can play a certain way. You can control yourself. You're a grown-ass man. Don't tell me that this is the only way that you can play, because he can play with intensity and not get on the officials. And the only reason I say that is because come playoff time, as we know, because he cost him a championship with the whole teabag situation, teams as part of their plan, I know this for a fact, teams as part of their plan in the playoffs will say, let's try to get Draymond off his game. Let's try to get Draymond pissed. Let's try to get Draymond out of this game. It's part of the strategy for teams. So the fact that he is playing under control and yet still has a fire to his game, but is playing under control, has been an underrated discussion point. And the only time it ever rears its ugly head is when he doesn't. So then he gets in trouble, and then somebody writes about it, tweets about it, says about it, social media about it. And then Draymond has to talk about it in his podcast, and it blows up into this thing. But he's been really, really well behaved, but yet playing really, really hard. So speaking of Draymond, okay, the offensive numbers don't look great last night, but here's Draymond making his case now that Victor Wembanyama is down to be the Dpoy, the Defensive Player of the Year.
I think, obviously, we keep winning and close this year out strong, most definitely. I look around the league, I don't see many players impacting the game on the defensive end the way I do. I don't see many players completely throwing off an entire team's offense the way I do. So 1,000%. Especially with Wemby going down. Seemed like he had it won, and now it's right there. So 1,000,000% I have a case, and I'll continue.
It's interesting, too, because one of the ways this award is won, and whether you want to agree with it or not, Rudy Gobert has won it many, many times. And in today's modern NBA, the old-time big center, he'll block a lot of shots, he'll alter a lot of shots, but with the game being the perimeter game it is, clearly the guy at 7'2" and 260 pounds, he's going to struggle on the perimeter. And then many, many times he wins the award, then he gets exposed in the playoffs to the point where Minnesota takes him off the floor because of the way the game is played. And then everybody screams and yells that Gobert should never be the Defensive Player of the Year. So it's a regular season award. If Draymond gets it now, it might be his last, because I don't know how often Victor Wembanyama is going to get hurt, but every single year he could win it and probably should win it. And even with the short amount of games that he played, I don't know how many he's going to end up playing. I could look it up, but I don't feel like it. He should probably still be the Defensive Player of the Year, and he's going to be the Defensive Player of the Year for the next 10 years. He's long, he can move, he's unbelievable. So if I'm Draymond Green, I am going to do the same thing he just did, which is you've got to kind of campaign for some of these things. Like I said, the MVP and all these different kind of things, it should be Jokic every single year. I get it. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having the tremendous year that he is. It just depends on what you believe. Now, Defensive Player of the Year, there is no interpretation. MVP, there's an interpretation. What does it mean? Lots of people are like, what would they be without him? Well, that just tells you about the rest of the team. It's an individual award. I'm just looking at who has the best season. Jokic is going to end up, it looks like at this point, Jokic is going to end up in the top 3 in points, assists, and rebounds. Nobody's ever done that. So I think that's pretty impressive. I understand what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is doing. I do take winning into account. Oklahoma City is going to have the best record in the Western Conference. They're great. So he's probably going to win it just because sports writers get bored and they want something new and they want a new storyline to write. I mean, if they give it to Jokic again, it's like Jokic wins MVP. Just take last year's piece, put in a few different numbers of what Jokic has, and we get bored as sports writers. But I tell you this all the time. All it does is piss off said player. And if the Warriors are sitting, and this is why I don't like it, that Jokic won't win it, and he's already motivated, and most players already are. But the first team that's going to be up after it's announced he's not MVP is going to be the Golden State Warriors as we sit right now in the 6-3 matchup. And I hope that's not the case, because as I told you, in covering the Bulls versus Jazz, both in 97 and 98, you had Karl Malone win the MVP, I think it was in 97, and there was not a press conference. As I've told you many times, I was assigned to the Bulls locker room. There was not a press conference that Michael Jordan attended in which he didn't somehow finagle in that Karl Malone was the MVP and he was not. It was constant. I mean, it was almost like you were playing a game. Like, when's he going to say it? When's he going to say it? When's he going to say it? It would be on, and nobody would ask him about it. He would just like put it in there, and he put it in there multiple times. A lot of times, like, well, I'm not the MVP. It's Karl Malone, and he would just have a smirk on his face, like, I'm kicking the Jazz's ass, and they said that guy was the MVP. What a joke, because he could have been it every single year, but a guy would have a really good season. They're like, God, we've given it to that guy every year. Let's give it to somebody else. And so that's what they're going to do. They're going to probably give it to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and my angle on those kind of things. I don't care. What it does is at the end of someone's career, they say how many MVPs, how many All-Star games, in football, how many All-Pros, that makes your case for the Hall of Fame. And all these talking head shows scream and yell about who should be the MVP or who should be that or who should get that award. Nobody cares at the end of the day. Everybody just cares about team success. Like, what is my team? I'm talking from a fan standpoint. For my team, how far did they go? Oh, he won MVP. I was in Dallas one year when Dirk Nowitzki won MVP. Hello. 19, we know. The We Believe Warriors, and he got his MVP trophy in like a conference room. Why? Because he got knocked out of the playoffs as a 1 seed by the Warriors, and he stood there with it in his hand, and no one cared because they got knocked out of the first round. That's just what it is. So my point is I don't want to feel the wrath of Jokic in the first round after someone else gives, or after the writers give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the MVP, and Jokic says, okay. I mean, he's not a very emotional guy, but in his mind, he's going to go, okay, who's first up? The Warriors? All right. And he's going to average 30, 20, and 20 for the series, and he's going to go, but I'm not the MVP. And he's going to have a smirk on his face after they beat the Warriors like 4 games to 2, but I'm not the MVP. But you just average 30, 20, and 20. Yeah, man, I'm not the MVP. I mean, that's how these dudes work, man. It's like, I don't want to give him, you're going to be motivated. It's the playoffs. I totally get that. But there's always another level to these guys. So anyway, that's where we are. Episode 92, the Golden State bounce back. Is Dray Defensive Player of the Year? He cares. He's already a Hall of Famer. That's the thing, is he's trying to say, look, I'm one of the greatest defenders of all time. You're never going to top Bill Russell. There's certain defenders you're not going to be that guy. But Draymond Green, for his size, if we put some sort of a caveat on it, for his size at whatever he is, 6'6", 6'7", whatever the things say, in sneakers, in socks, whatever. I don't remember what it was, the NBA combine, if they even have that when he was coming out. But he's one of the best interior defenders or overall defenders for guys his size in NBA history. And if he wants to win the Dpoy because Victor Wembanyama is out, then that's the way you got to do it. You got to go to a podium and say, look, man, that dude didn't play enough games and I'm the guy. Because I don't think they're ever going to give Rudy Gobert one again. I just don't. All right, let me get to a couple of things on the chat line. Playoff Jimmy, we got to. Dray Dpoy, Playoff Jimmy. So that's about what I've got. Oh, let me do this because I'm going to check everything out in terms. Somebody's got a Rodman thing I'm going to mention here real quick. But let me pop this up and share my screen with you one more time. And because you know how obsessed I am with this kind of thing. So I showed you the box score already. But here's the deal. I do this every single day, and it has nothing to do with get that off my screen. It has nothing to do with the bracket in the tournament, which we'll get to in just a second, March Madness. There is your bracket as of today, and you see that right there. Please get away from me, Nuggets. 3-6 Warriors, Nuggets. Love the second round matchup, although the Rockets have been hot as the 2. But if you sit right there, you're very, very close. As you see the Nuggets and the Rockets both 44-25. I'd like to get away from the Nuggets as long as possible. So if the Nuggets could nudge ahead of the Rockets and be the 2, then you get the Rockets in the first round, and I like that matchup for the Warriors. I'm not saying that would be easy because they've got some fire. A lot of young players, but then they have a guy like Fred VanVleet. They have some players that have played. They do have some veteran guys, but by and large, that's a young team that hasn't won anything. And remember, that was the team that was right on the Warriors' butt last year. And then the Warriors kind of pulled away late in the season, so the Rockets didn't make the playoffs. So that's a hungry team, but it's a young team. They haven't won a lot as a team, so I would think the Warriors would win that series. And then if the Nuggets went up to the 2, then, yeah, you got to deal with them in the second round, but that's fine. As I've said many, many times, I love where the Lakers are because the Grizzlies haven't been playing great basketball. You'd beat the Grizzlies, take on a young Thunder team that's very, very good and very, very deep, but I'd rather play a young Thunder team than I would a Nuggets team that's won championships and doesn't seem to lose to the Warriors. So that is the latest as far as the bracket. I know I obsess over that dumb bracket. I just don't want to see the Nuggets across from the Warriors. Thank you very much. Your standings as we sit here today, and whatever, Eastern Conference, we'll see you later. But there's the West, and as I keep telling you, you get so excited about what the Warriors have done. 8-2 in their last 10, so they're making up 3 on Memphis, 2 on the Lakers, 2 on the Nuggets. They're playing great basketball. But Minnesota right there, and Minnesota lost the other night to Indiana. They gave you a nice little present, Obi Toppin. So they are still sitting there, only a half game behind you, 1 in the loss column. Don't worry about the wins, worry about the losses. You can't get the losses back. So it's 29 losses for the Warriors. It's 30 for the Timberwolves, and it's 30 for the Clippers, who have won 4 straight. So I kept thinking during the season, because Norman Powell in the first half was carrying them, like, Norman Powell is carrying the Clippers. There was no Kawhi, but now Kawhi is back. They win. So all of a sudden they're sitting there going, okay, well, the Timberwolves and Clippers, teams that I didn't leave for dead, but the Timberwolves, the Karl Anthony Towns trade and Julius Randle's been in and out of the lineup. And I'm thinking to myself, well, they're not going in. They're not going to be there. And then they are. They're sitting right there. So as good as the Warriors have been, as excited as you are about the Warriors, as much discussion as we've had about the Warriors and how far they can go in the playoffs, they are right there in terms of having to possibly play in the play-in game. And it's a huge difference being in the 7-8, the 9-10, those kind of things. If you're the 7 and you win one game, you're in the playoffs and you're the 7 seed. Then right now it'd be 7-2 versus the Rockets, and I wouldn't mind that matchup. But it's just playing those extra games, and it's possibly going up against a red hot team. Now look, the teams in the play-in tournament right now don't scare you. Like Phoenix could get in it. They're very flawed. Dallas has tons of injuries. The Kings, we saw them the other night. But then if you get into it and you're playing the Clippers, Harden could get hot and Kawhi could do what Kawhi does. And all of a sudden you're playing, it's like you lose a game and now you're playing for your season in a one game. It's just, you don't want to mess with that whole thing. So you got to stay in the 6. And I've said that the whole time. If they're the 6, even though I don't love the Nuggets matchup, I think that they're a threat. You start messing with the play-in game, and that's what the NBA loves. Oh, we love sudden death. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. They get all excited about that kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, man, get me away from that. So, yeah, it's as excited as you start getting. You look at the standings, and I'm sorry to bring them to you every day because it's like, damn, Minnesota and the Clippers are that close? So you got to watch that whole thing. But it's close down the stretch, and they've got to keep it going. So there you go. All right, that is it for the Warriors. Golden State bounce back. Dray Dpoy, playoff Jimmy. And that is, I was going to go case to 49ers, but we'll do that. So let me hit the chat real quick, and then I got a ton on the Niners that we got to talk about today. Let's see, what else do we have? What's going on today? People are talking about steroids. Sunshine Steve, did I say hello? Did I say hello to Sunshine Steve today? Everybody welcome Sunshine Steve to the chat today. People talking about Rodman. I got tons of Rodman stories. One of the best Rodman stories. Rodman, yeah. Back in the day, Mike, it was just they let you get away with a lot more physicality, and it was watching. What I would do when I was covering that series is I would just watch those two. It was unbelievable. And with social media nowadays, you couldn't believe it because in covering those shoot-arounds back in those days, Rodman just wasn't there. Salt Lake City to Vegas is like a 45-minute plane ride, and they just didn't care. And so you talk to Jordan, be like, where's, after a while, you just quit asking. But Rodman's not at practice. Rodman's not at shoot-arounds. He's not involved in the offense. He's a totally different guy. Like, it's like a guy who's not in the huddle. And like, why is that guy not in the huddle? Because Rodman plays his own game. Like the band is playing a certain song and Rodman's playing another song way over here. Like, he's not involved in the offense. He's just grabbing offensive rebounds and kicking it back out. Defensively, he knows what he has to do, but he would fly between games to Vegas. He hated Salt Lake City. There was nothing to do. And he would fly to Vegas between games and then nobody cared. And like Phil Jackson would look at you like you were coming out of left field. If you, after a while, asked about him going to Vegas, it was like, that's what he does to get himself ready. Like, we're not even talking about it. It was wild. Like today's social media, they would have people assigned to just watching him. And he would just, between games, he just go to Vegas. Like, I can't handle being in Salt Lake City. I got to go to Vegas. But the best Dennis Rodman story I have, and then we'll get into the Niners, is that when they won, I guess it was the last championship, and I've told you this story to a certain extent before. So there's Steve Kerr and Judd Bushler and all these different guys, and they're dancing and partying, pouring champagne on each other. And then in one part that you couldn't get to was, because they had already done their media responsibilities on the podium. So you had Jordan with in this room that was shut off, but it was in the locker room. It was just this separate area. And Jordan was with Leonardo DiCaprio and all these high-end people partying in this room, and you could see him through the window, but you couldn't get to him anymore. Scottie Pippen was with a different group. And then Dennis Rodman was in the locker room, but he was in this corner, and he had two security guys, one on each side of him. And, he had dated Madonna and all these different people, but at that time, for a short period of time, he was married to Carmen Electra. And so what was so amazing is that, like I said, and I've played this for you, the Steve Young, I had a live mic I was the opposition locker room. So I had a live mic. And anytime I had somebody, I would just say into the microphone, because they would put me in queue so they couldn't hear me over there, I have Judd Bushler, I have Steve Kerr, I have Tony Kukoc. So I interviewed all those guys after the game, championship, champagne flying, one of those guys. And this is before goggles, so your eyes are burning, you can't even see. And so you walk over to Rod, because there was a big gathering around Rodman. And it wasn't his locker. It was kind of just a corner of the locker room, right? And you walk over towards Rodman, and he has two security guards. And there's Carmen Electra in a very revealing outfit, just sitting on his lap, and he's in a towel, and he's just sitting there, sucking down champagne, and they're just having their own party in the corner. It was just the weirdest scene. Jordan, you can't get to, but you can see, with all the A-listers. Pippen's with his group in a different room. Phil Jackson's in a one of those same rooms, window. You can see it. He's with a different group. All the other guys, peripherals, are actually partying in the locker room, where I've been in there for many championships, and they're normally together, but they're not. It's just that group, as I talked about. And then there's Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra with security guards around him, and she's on his lap, and he's in a towel, and he's slugging champagne. It was the wildest thing ever. And what's funny is I got not caught, but I'm standing there, and because in person, she is so attractive at that point. I don't know. She's still very pretty, but I mean, I don't know. I'm saying she's probably 25, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. But you're just like, this is unbelievable. And so in my ear, I remember the producer going, you got anybody? You got anybody? Because, we'd go to the Jazz locker room, and they're like, yeah, it sucks losing the championship. And then they go into the Bulls locker room. It's like, championship, whatever. So I had interviewed quite a few guys, and I was kind of walking around looking for more. And the producer in my ear goes, you got anybody? You got anybody? And here I am just staring at Carmen Electra like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to be working in here. Let's get with it. I was a young guy. You know how it goes. Yeah, I mean, insanely. It was just, and I'm up close going, I've never probably been as close to this to attractiveness my whole life, and I will never get this close. But that's why there was two security guards, because it was a bunch of dopey media guys going, oh. I'm like, get away. You've been here long enough. Kerr was in the middle of the locker room, and I'm missing guys, but it was it was Kerr, it was Bushler, it was Kukoc, it was all the rest of the guys, not named Jordan, Pippen, Phil Jackson, or Rodman. So the whole rest of the team was in the middle doing what teams normally do when they win championships. They're pouring champagne all over each other, all that kind of stuff. There's media members, and we're trying to get all these interviews and all that kind of stuff. But they'd come over to the side and talk to you for a minute or whatever, and then they go back partying. But Kerr was part of that group in the middle, everybody else that was partying. And then, like I said, the locker rooms, the way that it was a Delta Center, I don't know what even they call it anymore, but they had these, I don't know, little caverns that you off the locker room, and these separate rooms where they were like little meeting rooms, but they had those little sliver windows, so you could see who was in those rooms. But it was, when you think about The Last Dance, and if you watch The Last Dance, just how separated out the team was. That's what was going on, was that Jordan and Pippen were kind of sick of each other, and Rodman, they were just sick of Rodman, but they could put up with them because he helped them win a championship. And then Phil Jackson was with his own people. It was the weirdest scene I had ever seen, just in terms of a championship, because normally guys are partying together. So yeah, like I saw the end of the Lakers too. I covered the Pistons and Lakers in 2004. And I was in the Lakers locker room at the end of that. And remember, Karl Malone was hurt. He was a member of that team. Gary Payton was hurt. He was a member of that team. And you knew that, like Shaq and Kobe, they couldn't stand each other at that point. And Phil Jackson was gone. That was 2004. That was their last chance at another championship. And they won the first game. Kobe hit a game winner, and then Detroit beat them 4 straight. And that was the end of that one. And that was the end of that era. But again, going over the Pistons locker room after that, they were all partying. It was crazy. Like Hank Williams Jr. is in there. It was the wildest scene I'd ever seen in my life. In fact, I was doing mornings then. I was in the Pistons locker room till probably 3 a.m. after they won that championship against the Lakers. And I looked at my watch and I went, it's 3 a.m. I have two choices. And because I'd get to the studios in Detroit at like 5 a.m. And I was like, do I go home? Like, what's the point of that? And I stink because, champagne's flying and all that kind of stuff. And I thought I can go home, which really wasn't on the way. And I could shower and do all those things, or I could just go straight to the studio. So I think I got out of the arena at about 3:30. It took me about 45 minutes to go to the studio. And it was like 4:15. And I'm sitting there just stinking like death. But it was like, I didn't go home. It was crazy. But point is that most teams, when they win a championship, Giants won their championships, everything else. When teams win a championship, it's everybody, especially in basketball, because there's, 12 guys, 15 guys, whatever. It's a small locker room and they're all just partying together, but not there. And that's why when I saw the Last Dance, and then I'll get back onto the chalkboard, we're taking a long break off the freeway here. But that's why when I saw the Last Dance and everybody kind of seemed like, we're pretty much done. I just right then and there I knew it. And then years later they have that thing out. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that. That's a great question right there. If you had the ability to walk up to Steve back then and say, hey, I'm from the future, you're going to win 5 more rings and coach one of the greatest players, that'd be crazy. The one thing I do know about Steve, just because, and I don't know, I'm sure he would remember this, but when he was in Portland for 1 year, Steve Kerr was in Portland for 1 year, and I was doing an afternoon drive show in Portland, and Steve was a weekly guest of ours, and that was the Jailblazers. And I'm going way too long on this. I got to get back to the 49ers. Give me 1 second. But when Steve for the one season was a member of the Blazers, he had gotten traded in a trade. I know this is crazy because you probably don't even remember this, but he got traded. So he goes Bulls, Spurs. He's winning championships. He's loving it. He's a veteran guy. They include him in a trade, did San Antonio, for a guy named Derek Anderson. He was a guard out of Kentucky. And Steve's like, what? And so he never even moved his family to Portland. It was the Jailblazers. They were a complete mess. And this will tie into the Warriors just a tiny bit because Mike Dunleavy Sr., which, of course, Mike Dunleavy Jr., general manager of the Warriors. But Mike Dunleavy Sr., I had been on the beat for the Warriors for a few years, and I knew him to a certain extent. And he got fired from that Jailblazer team that had a ton of talent, but they never went anywhere. They were really close. They almost beat the Lakers in L.A. You know that story. And then the Lakers come back. They play the Pacers. They win their first championship. But people forget that Blazers team was really good, and they had them on the ropes. I think they were up 13 to start the fourth quarter in, I think it was 01 or something like that. But anyway, Steve was traded to the Blazers in a Derek Anderson trade. So Mike Dunleavy gets fired, and we're all kind of standing around waiting for it. And Steve Kerr standing there, and because Steve was on our show, and he went through player by player. I'm not going to specifically do it, even though the statute of limitations is up. And basically was like, here's what's wrong with the Blazers. You see that guy over there, you see that guy over there, see that guy over there, see the guy over there. And just to put this in context, it was guys like Zach Randolph and Bonzi Wells and Rasheed Wallace, and they were just a mess. And Damon Stoudemire got busted for a bunch of weed, and it was just a dumpster fire of a team. Just no chemistry whatsoever. There's a guy named Bob Whitsitt who used to run the team, and he was like a fantasy guy. Like he thought it was fantasy basketball, and he had all these different guys. And anyway, long story short, Steve, I don't even think Steve was there for an entire year, but we had him on weekly. And it was just like having a guy with like, a normal guy hanging out with just a bunch of knuckleheads. You knucklehead. And that's just what it was. All right. Enough of that. Look at that. See, there's a Derek Anderson. Yeah. Kentucky, good player, nice guy. But yeah, there was a trade there. Walker Mercer, good pull right there. Tony Delk, the former Warrior. Very nice. All right, let's move on. Episode 92. We are to, let's see, we did Golden State bounce back. We did Dray, Dpoy. We did playoff Jimmy. Let's go case for 49ers. So I see this thing this morning, and we have focused so much on the negativity of the 49ers. And I get why, because if we look at the offseason, we see what they've lost. We see what they've gained. They have the market cornered on special teams players. Saran Neal, John Weeks, Richie Grant, Luke Gifford, Jason Pinnock, those are all special teams guys for the most part. And so, yeah, like you had the worst special teams by a mile. I get it. Your kicker's still around. But anyway, we've gone over that ground before. So we know what the 49ers offseason has been, and you're not overly excited about it. But then I see this morning, and it says Vegas believes the Niners are still the best team in the NFC West after the first week of free agency. I didn't think they were the best team going into free agency. I think that the Rams and the way that they played, look, the Rams were a minute away from beating the Super Bowl champions in Philadelphia, coming in LA, beaches, indoor stadium, all this kind of stuff. There's no way that they should have been in that game. Philly's hardened. It's cold as hell. And the Rams almost pulled that thing off at the end. So we don't like anything LA. I get it. We're in Northern California. But you don't have to acknowledge. I was going to say you have to acknowledge this. You don't have to acknowledge anything you don't want to acknowledge. But the Rams, before free agency, were better than the 49ers. And the Rams right now are better than the 49ers. But that doesn't mean it's going to be the case. Because as we well know, as much as the offseason has sucked for the 49ers, and this is how if you're new in here, I'll reset this really quickly. This is a financial reset because the numbers have gotten so out of control in what they're paying players who are no longer on the franchise. And I don't know if I have it still. I might have deleted it or I might have kept it. Let me see what I have. If I have the exact number, I do have it right here. This is dead money. And this is a couple of moves ago, but that was 77. That was probably a week or 10 days ago. They're up to about $90 million. And then people want to trade Brandon Aiyuk, which I'll get into in a second. But that's dead money. Those are players who will not play for the 49ers this upcoming season. And you can add, I don't even think that Kinlaw is even not Kinlaw, that Hargrave is even on that list. So Hargrave, you can add $8 million and $24 million next year, by the way. That number is upwards of $90 million now. So I had done that a few days ago. So I need to actually update that. But they're at about $90 million in dead cap, which isn't great. And so Jed York made a decision based not solely on that, but in large part on that, to say we're going to have a financial reset in this offseason, and we're not going to go overboard for guys. And we went through this yesterday, but since we're bringing it up, I'll bring it up again. Dre Greenlaw's contract was a 1-year deal. It's really frustrating that they didn't get that done. They tried to at the last minute. And what that screams to me, and what I've also heard, is that the first offer to Dre Greenlaw was fairly insulting to him, especially after those 3 linebackers went off the board. And even though the 49ers stepped up their offer, from what I understand, to be every bit of what Denver's offer was just, I'm laughing, and I would love this contract myself, but 1 year and $11.5 million that Dre Greenlaw at that point had already soured on the Niners, as much as he wanted to come back, as much as he wanted to play with Fred Warner, as much as he wanted to finish the deal, that because the early negotiations where they essentially said, you're coming off an Achilles, we want to pay you for 1 year at $8-9 million, something in that range. And he's saying no. And especially after those linebackers went off the board and he was the best linebacker remaining, and he's going, okay. And that's when the 49ers went, damn, we misread the market. We know you're coming off an Achilles. Your market is bigger and better than we thought. Here's what we'll do. And he's like, I'm already down the line with this. Sorry. It's like treating somebody like garbage in a personal relationship, and then at the last minute saying, but I love you, come back to me. And it was like, too late. So that's exactly what happened. I played the Adam Schefter stuff for you yesterday. So the point in bringing this up is the case for the 49ers. We know what they've lost, but nobody likes this part because it doesn't get clicks and it doesn't get discussion. It doesn't this and it doesn't that. They're re-signing Brock Purdy. They're extending George Kittle. They're going to redo Fred Warner's deal. He's going to be here. So defensively, it's one thing. I'll give you, if you're like going, they're not going anywhere because that defense is trash. Now, right now it is. And I've used this analogy, and I don't know if it works at all. The 49ers, we haven't discussed this much, but this is a fact. And I know it's fun saying that they've lost everything and they're going to be terrible and all these kind of things, and I get it. And you can say, Lund, you're being a homer, and that's fine. I'll live with that if that's the case. But if you look at what they have offensively, Brandon Aiyuk, I do think, is coming back. But let's just, for the sake of this conversation, he's on the team right now. So Brandon Aiyuk at some point will be back. He's an above-average wide receiver. Pearsall's got to come through. Jennings is good. Kittle's the best tight end in the game. They do have the best left tackle in the game. They do have Christian McCaffrey. Let's assume for this conversation he's healthy, which I don't know that they trade Jordan Mason if they don't feel good about Christian McCaffrey. So he's there. Point in saying all those things is they will score points. Yeah, they got to fix their left guard. That's not much of a fix. Aaron Banks wasn't very good. I'd like him to upgrade their center, but okay. They went to the Super Bowl with that same center. I'm not saying he's good. I'm simply saying that he's good in the run game, actually. He's not good in the pass game. And if you get middle pressure, as I've said a million times with Brock Purdy, who's about 6 foot, that's not good. So I'd like him to be replaced, but they did get to a Super Bowl with him if we're going to stay along the same company line. So they're going to score points. I think suffice to say they're going to score points. Special teams, they've signed like 18 special teams guys. I don't know. I think they're going to be better. I would like it if number 4 would get better or if they'd replace him, but okay. But special teams, let's assume for a minute that there's not so many game-changing plays in the negative for the other team in a positive because they've addressed special teams over and over. In fact, it's the only thing they've addressed in the offseason. Now, defensively is a totally different thing, but what I would say about the defense of the 49ers and why maybe Vegas is putting them still as the favorite in the NFC West is that John and Kyle have done this before, and outside of what I think is going to be a right tackle at number 11, if the right guy is there, which moves McKivitz to left guard, which fixes the offensive line, I think the entire rest of the draft is going to be defense-related. The defensive line has to be addressed. Eric Branch wrote a great piece in the Chronicle either yesterday or today, but it's out there you should check out. That basically is like, how the hell did John and Kyle, who put so much focus on the defensive line and knowing damn well that especially in 2019 when we went to Super Bowl 54 in Miami, which was a lot of fun. I'm sarcastic there if you didn't catch that. A lot of fun during the week, just not the game. But their defensive line was everything. It's all we talked about. It was like, yeah, their offense is great. Yeah, they got this guy and this guy and that guy and that guy. But the defensive line is just dominating people. And by the way, we saw in the Super Bowl that offensive and defensive lines, oh, yeah, they win Super Bowls. It's the way Kansas City has lost. If Kansas City has lost in the Super Bowl, it's because Tampa Bay had a defensive line that dominated. It's because Philly had a defensive line that dominated. That's how you beat the best teams. And the Niners know that. I don't know why they forgot about it, but Nick Bosa's sitting around going, hello? Is this thing on? Like, what are we doing? So there's got to be a way to address that. And I'm going to pop something up on the screen here in a minute because even though we're at the desperation point of free agency, as I like to call it, 2 a.m., the lights come on and it's like, damn, and all of a sudden the 4s become 10s at 2 a.m. in the morning when the lights come on. And that's kind of where the 49ers are, but they're not going to make any stupid deals. We know that. And what's funny is I continue to see these articles over and over and over and over again. Well, the Niners can pick up this guy and the Niners can pick up that guy. And they're like name guys. And I'm like, they've clearly showed you that they're not going to do that. It's got to be the team friendliest of deals, the friendliest of friendliest, right? But there are a few names out there that make some sense for the Niners, and they have a couple of bucks. And I keep hearing about the Brock contract and how it's going to blow them out of the water. It's not at the beginning. So this really, obviously, when you're going to pay a quarterback to go from $1 million to at some point the AAV being around average annual value of around 55, yeah, that's going to make a difference long term for the 49ers, but not short term. And they know what they're doing and they're moving the chess pieces around. But this is, again, about a financial reset to get out from under all this money that they're paying guys who are not playing for the team. And he just wants a reset in that way. And then I think they'll resume their normal stuff, a year from now. But that doesn't mean they don't have talent on their team. And it doesn't mean, and this is how I look at it defensively, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. There are a lot of teams in this league where you say they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Let me ask you this. Have the 49ers shown enough over the years with this current regime that they deserve the benefit of the doubt to say, okay, the offense will score points. I believe that. Defensively, they're a mess, but they brought in Robert Saleh, who won't tackle anybody or do anything like that. Won't force fumbles, no interceptions, no sacks for Robert Saleh, but he is very good at what he does. And they brought in Gus Bradley, who's very good at what he does, which is a much better defensive staff than they had last year with a rookie and then an assistant guy that everybody hated, who somehow landed on his feet and got a DC job. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I believe that they'll get the thing fixed. I believe they'll at least have a competent defense, and with an offense that I think can score in the upper 20s, if not the low 30s, then I think they're not going to be terrible. Now, the one thing I did tell you before I got to the chat line, and you tell me how stupid and crazy I am, which is fine. Oh, this is the Greenlaw deal, by the way. I was looking for that. And that's the only, of the offseason, that's the depressing part, as we talked about. 11.5 fully guaranteed. They could have done that. And at the end, from what I understand, they did offer that, but it was just too late. Like, they're like, no, like you've already insulted me. I'm not coming back. But let me just go to this. I'm going to share my screen with you one more time, because this is other than the draft, because there's a couple of things that people have hit me up with is what's left, right? So this is according to Pro Football Focus. So they're not going to go get a quarterback. They already got Mac Jones. Running back wise, I know you love the names of Dobbins and Chubb right there. They're both done because of injuries. Wide receiver wise, they got Demarcus Robinson. I don't think that they will dive back into this pool, even though I don't hate Amari Cooper on a 1-year deal. Stephon Diggs is a wacko. Elijah Moore's kind of making the rounds, and I thought he might be a guy that the 49ers would look at, but I don't think they will. Other than that, I don't see anybody. Some people have talked about Tyler Boyd. I just don't see it. That's not going to happen. Lockett's not a fit, even though he was really good for Seattle for years. He's like 5'10", 180, dealt with a lot of injuries. He's not going to block or be physical, so I don't see them doing that. Tight end-wise, they already made their move. Offensive tackle-wise, I know that you would like to see somebody in there as far as, let me get a right tackle. I think in the draft, they're going to take a right tackle, and they're going to move McKivitz over. I could be wrong. But other than that, nobody of note there that's going to play for what the 49ers have. Interior of the offensive line, as you can see right there, how important that is. The one name, and I'm pointing out right there, Tevin Jenkins was a guy that was in Seattle yesterday. He's fought a ton of injuries. A kid out of Oklahoma State, can play tackle or guard, but was moved inside. He's 6'6", about 325 pounds. And the Niners probably won't deal with him just because of all the injuries. But when he plays, keyword, availability, the best ability, when he plays, his PFF numbers are really good, and he's actually a solid player. And I wouldn't mind at all if he was the left guard of the 49ers, but I do think they have a plan. But I wouldn't mind that because he's versatile. He could play tackle as well. But Jenkins is probably of the list. I would think he's not so bad. And these lists are based on what PFF thinks of the guy. So if you've got a bunch of guys signed around a guy and then all of a sudden you have a blank space like you do with Jenkins, it means that they have him graded pretty highly, but he just hasn't signed. And the reason he hasn't signed is because he's had a boatload of injuries, which is probably not what the Niners want to deal with. But let's say you could get Jenkins at a 1-year, $5 million clip, and then you put a bunch of incentives in there. That's not going to crush you. But I don't even know if the 49ers at this point will do that. Becton was a guy I really liked, but I don't think he can move well enough in this offense. But 2-20 normally, that's just not very much. And that would have been nice to have him at guard, but they're not going to do that. Obviously, he signed with the Chargers. And that tells you something because that's Jim Harbaugh. He knows the running game. But Jenkins is a guy that I might keep an eye on. He did not sign in Seattle, at least as of this morning. Defensive line-wise, at the edge, they could use a ton of guys. Miller is done. Zadarius Smith didn't look great in Detroit last year. Judon. I mean, there's some actual names. Preston Smith, obviously, when he was at the Packers, was pretty good. The one name I would keep an eye on, maybe he wouldn't come back here, and he's had injuries, but he's recovered. When Charles Omenihu came over from the Texans a few years ago, he was absolutely great. He can play inside, he can play outside. That's one guy, and maybe he's just waiting for his market because he doesn't want to take less. But if I'm the 49ers, you have a relationship with him. That would be a guy that absolutely I'd be 100% trying to get if I was the 49ers. You've got to do it at your number. I understand that. But what I'm pointing out here is a lot of people are saying, well, there's just nobody left. Well, Tevin Jenkins, when you're looking at the trenches, which the 49ers need, Jenkins isn't bad. Yeah, he's got injury issues, but nobody that's available now. Free agency, as I tell you again and again and again, there's no perfect players in free agency to start. There's a reason why they made it to free agency. They're too expensive. They're too old. They're too inconsistent. They're too injury prone, whatever the case. Now you get to this level, 2 a.m. and the lights just came on level of free agency in the NFL. Major, major red flags with guys. But I would think, like I said, Omenihu has been a solid rotation player that can play inside, outside. Do the Niners have any inclination to sign him? I don't know. I like Calais Campbell, but he's an older guy. Is he holding out or is he just going to retire? So it's not like you're void of guys. Now, here's where it gets interesting to me is I understand that you're probably going to get a young guy in the draft to play linebacker, but I was telling this to Larry Krueger the other day on the Krug Show. What happens with linebackers is they move forward just fine, rookies. They move forward just fine. So you watch them in drills in training camp, and they're going forward like, oh, my God, this guy's awesome. Then they get into pass drills, and a lot of these guys, no chance. I told you the Reuben Foster story from years ago, and I know that Reuben Foster flamed out. But going forward, I was like, Reuben Foster's going to be amazing. Watch him in training camp, his first training camp. Oh, my God, this guy's going to be amazing. Has to go backwards in pass drills, absolutely getting crushed. Third, fourth string tight ends. Tight ends are going to be UPS drivers, no offense. Mailmen, whatever. They were just coming on the field. Everybody's just toasting him. And I'm like, this is a problem. And that's what happens with young linebackers. So the two names, not that name, but the two names I looked at were Kendricks, who almost signed with the Niners last year. And then a lot of people have asked me about CJ Mosley. So put a pin in Mosley for a second because I'm going to show you something. But other than that, I don't see anybody. But there are two guys. I know Larry Krueger likes Willie Gay Jr., who was really good against the Niners in the Super Bowl. I don't know what his deal is. DB-wise, they already got Trey Brown of the Seahawks, so I doubt they're going to go into this again. I'm confused why Asante Samuel Jr. is still out there. I know it's injuries to a point, but he's still pretty good. And then I think they need a free safety, at least an adult in the room. Simmons was not good in Atlanta after having a great year in Denver, or great career in Denver. Would not mind him. He's not a bad player. And again, this is how they have him graded. So all of a sudden, when you see all this, and then there's a gap, and there's another guy I like, and they had him in last year, Julian Blackmon, had a good year with the Colts. I have no idea why he's not signed. So that's not a bad one. Quandre Diggs, remember him for years in Seattle. I think he's done. So there it is. So the point in that exercise is there are a few guys. I mean, again, it's 2 a.m. with the lights coming on. There's no question about it. But there are a few guys out there that are not terrible players in a position of need, specifically along the defensive line for the 49ers. I don't know if they've talked to Charles Omenihu, but as bad as they look right now on paper along the defensive line, to get a guy like Omenihu who's like 6'5", 290, can play inside, play outside, knows Chris Kocurek. The Niners know him. He wasn't bad in Kansas City. He had some injuries. He blew out a knee one year. But I would think that Omenihu would be a guy that you would call, and maybe they're just waiting for the price to drop. Like, hey, man, if you got other options, I get it. But this is where when people say, well, they only gave Juice $4 million. Oh, they only gave that special teams guy $2 million. They only gave – all of a sudden it starts adding up. And I'm thinking to myself, I'd rather have Charles Omenihu at 5 plus incentives. I'd rather have Tevin Jenkins at 5 plus incentives. Like, those are guys that at least offer me some upside in a position of need, because the problem I'm looking at right now is rookies in general. I say this all the time. It's a show philosophy, and you know it, and you know what I'm going to say. I'm sorry that I have to repeat it, but they're lottery tickets. So some kid is going to come in, and maybe he's going to be great. Maybe he's never going to be great. Maybe it's going to take him till his second or third year. We've seen it all across the board. Fred Warner, when first came in and he wore 48 for the 49ers, was good. It was good, but he's not Fred Warner like he is now or has been. It's just going to take a guy a year or two sometimes. And so for the 49ers to say, okay, we got those 11 picks, and all these 11 picks are going to hit. First of all, that's not going to happen. It's a 50-50 proposition in the first round and just goes down from there. So if out of these 11 picks, let's say that you get, because the Niners have done this in the past, let's say just for optimism, all right, just for optimism purposes here, that they get 4 really good players. Let's say they get like 3 Pro Bowlers. I mean, that's way above average, but let's just say they do. All right, the other 6 or 7 just don't work out. So you need sheer numbers on this team right now. Your defensive line completely depleted. You need a linebacker. You might need a free safety. You might need a corner. We said this before. You need a left guard. You need a future at left tackle. You might need a backup running back now that you traded for some weird reason Jordan Mason away. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if, I'm not going to draft the kicker. They're going to have to get one in free agency, because I'm not doing that again, and nor are the 49ers. And I've told you the story about when Kyle walked into the room and went, I wanted a running back, just telling you. He didn't yell it that loudly, but he kind of was smiling when he said it. But when we were doing the draft shows there. But anyway, they need a lot. And so to say that they're going to be able to get those guys because they have 11 picks and they're going to hit on all those guys and they're going to be able to fill roles next year, that's not going to happen. So I think they're sitting back going, okay, Charles Omenihu, because I talk about relationships all the time. Who's got a relationship out there? Well, you got one with Charles Omenihu, and he's probably thinking to himself, like most of these guys, well, at this point of free agency, with all the money kind of vaporizing, I'm not going to run out and sign a $5 million deal right now. Let me just wait. Let me just see who gets hurt. Let me see if I can gain some leverage somehow. So at this point, some of these veteran guys are like, there's no point in me signing now. I'll just wait. But there's a Omenihu out there. There's a Tevin Jenkins. There's a Julian Blackmon. There's a few guys. There's a couple of linebackers. CJ Mosley was the one I was going to tell you. So a lot of people have been hitting me up about CJ Mosley. So I looked this up today, and Pro Football Focus is not everything. And some good, some bad. But generally speaking, if you look at their top 10 guys who they have, at a certain position, they're pretty much right. So this was, what year is this? So this is last year. He had a bunch of injuries. So his overall grade, not great. His pass rush grade, whatever. She's not a pass rusher. But run defense, 81.6. Coverage grade, not great. Gotcha. That's during, so in only 13 total tackles. He was hurt last year. Got it. And that's one of the reasons at the age of, I think he's 32, right? Yeah, it says 32 in that corner. He's 32. But again, look for connections. Robert Saleh, CJ Mosley had a solid career. But you look at last year. So this is when he actually played. No, that's not right. Here we go. Let's go to 23 on both of those. There you go. So in 23, grade-wise, overall grade, this is the last year at a full year, so age 31, He was 11th of all linebackers in overall grade, 82.9. That's a nice grade. Really good against the run, really good against the pass rush, whatever. Decent against the run. Coverage grade was out of this world. First out of 179 linebackers. Now that's in 23. Had 105 solo tackles, doesn't rush the passer a lot, blah, blah, blah. So 155 total tackles, 50 assists, and 105 solo. So 155 tackles and a great coverage grade. So in 23, if he had been a free agent now, you'd be like, oh my God, I don't care if he's 31. We're all over it. So then you go to 22. Same thing. Let's go to 22. Again, tons of tackles, 115 plus the 43. So somebody do some quick math there. 178 tackles, something like that. 168, 178, 168. 168 tackles, not great against coverage, pretty good against the run. Overall grade, not great. Still, my point is that you need a veteran linebacker next to Fred Warner. You could do a lot worse than C.J. Mosley, and Robert Saleh knows him. So at this point, I do think if somebody like C.J. Mosley is out there, it's kind of the same thing I said about Charles Omenihu. Well, you know what? We're at the point where teams don't have a lot of money anyway, so let's just see. But here's where the clock is ticking for veterans. Once the draft happens, I just drafted 2 linebackers. I don't know that I want C.J. Mosley at that point. So while these guys are kind of waiting out the market a little bit, Omenihu, Mosley, again, some of those other guys that I mentioned, they've got about a month, because what starts to happen is teams lock in on the draft and they're like, okay, if you don't want to be with us, that's fine, because now we're locked in on the draft. We're not really looking at free agents. So they don't even have a month. They might have 2 to 3 weeks, because teams start locking in on the draft and they're like, you know what? We see 3 linebackers in the draft that we really like, and we think they're going to be there, because we start crystallizing what the draft is going to look like, and they start going, you know what? I don't think we're going to sign you. And maybe you get signed after the draft. Then what happens is you draft a bunch of guys. Another veteran wave happens because some guys get released because, well, we just filled that position. We're going to release this guy. So that's where you are. Is that, well, this looks ugly and looks nasty, and you're not going to get all these guys in the draft. There's 2 more things to do. There's some veterans out there that could help the 49ers, and after the draft, there's going to be other guys to be released. So everything doesn't have to be done in the draft. It's just they've put a hell of a lot of pressure on themselves to be great in the draft, if that makes sense. All right, we're down to the point where we're going to talk about Aiyuk's $22.8 million. We still are going to talk about what's left we just did. So I jumped ahead a little bit. Sorry. Melvin's contract, Robbie Ray solid. The Dodgers are 2-0. We still got a bunch of stuff we got to do. And we are 112 into the show today. So I wanted to make sure that we did that. I'll hit the chat line in just a second and say hello and reset everything on the show. But do remember, John Lund Unleashed. Make sure that you're watching and subscribed. Have those alerts on YouTube, John Lund Unleashed. Bay Area Sports Collective. If you have not gone on over to Bay Area Sports Collective, I'll give you a second. And all you got to do is subscribe there. And then you get my show. You get Tom Tolbert's show. You get Polly Mac with Creative Tony. So we're building that thing up. So make sure that that you're there for that one. We're also on Instagram at John Lund Radio. X. A lot of people watching on X this morning. Thank you for doing that. That's at John Lund Radio. Facebook, John Lund. And for the first time ever, we just thought we'd mess around with LinkedIn today. We might be annoying people. Like, people are looking for jobs. They're being very business-like over there. Very important. But not ties. And all of a sudden they're like, who's this jackass? Why is he here? So anyway, we'll see. We'll see what the response is there. Let's see. All right, let's hit the chat a little bit. Yeah, the Dodgers. I know. We'll get into that in just a second. Let's see. My initial thought: draft a tackle. Yeah, I've talked about this for a couple of days, so some people might be getting like, okay, I get it, but I know they like McKivitz at guard, and all I'm saying is that if Membu, the guy we talked about yesterday, the Missouri tackle, who's extremely athletic, he reminds a lot of people of. I hate these comparisons, but I'll say it anyway, just because he's so athletic. Of a Trent Williams type. I'm not saying he's Trent Williams. I'm just saying from an athletic standpoint, this guy ran a 4.91. Yeah, you don't have to run 40 yards, but had a great split, all those kind of things. But he backs it up with the tape, and he's super athletic. And you put him over to right tackle, you go over to left tackle. Yeah, Mosley was injured last year. Yep. I think he's going to be ready to play. I haven't heard anything that he's retiring or anything like that. But yeah, he missed most of last year. So I'm just saying, if maybe one of the reasons he hasn't signed is he isn't healthy. But I would think that if I'm the 49ers and I just lost Dre Greenlaw, that Mosley might be at the top of my list, because although last year in very limited time, he wasn't very good. In 2023, this guy had 155 tackles, was good against the pass, and at the very worst is giving me insurance for a young linebacker that I'm probably going to have to play next to Fred Warner. So I'm just saying that maybe there's that. Let's see what else. Good. Lots of good stuff going on in the chat line. All right, let me go to this. So Brandon Aiyuk is interesting. I've said this all throughout the. Okay, this might be what I'm getting into. So let me see if I can do this. Do you think the teams will lay off BA and the 49ers deal? Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about right now. Thank you, Kyle, for leading us into that. So what it means is right there on the Aiyuk $22.8 million is that on April 1st, they owe him a large chunk of change. That's what it is. So a large chunk of change to come to his way. And so the offseason, I've been very persistent in saying, very consistent, I should say, consistent in saying that I didn't think they were going to trade Brandon Aiyuk. It is the draft pick they're going to get back, what, a third or a fourth? Maybe it's a conditional kind of a pick where it's like, okay, BA for a 4, and it could be a 3. Now, what you have to realize is because the 49ers, let's be consistent in reading what they've done, all right? What we're logically thinking the 49ers are, this offseason, they're different. And so they're being purely business related, all right? They're being cold and calculated, except for Juice, but they're being cold and calculated. So if they're being cold and calculated, and if they're deciding, you know what, all this money that we're eating for players to not play for us this year, let's just do it all in one fell swoop. So they could conceivably do that with Aiyuk because they don't want to, because Jed is just like, you know, when he's trying to stamp the $22.8 million check, like he's like, I can't do it. You know, he just won't do it, right? He's that pissed off, and it's become personal. And I've told you this before. I've worked for teams, covered teams that when it gets personal for the owner, it's a problem because it affects his or her vision, which for Al Davis, for example, he just didn't care. He would tear apart the team because he hated Marcus Allen that much. So when it starts to get personal, Jerry Jones has had those kind of issues. It becomes personal. He likes a guy maybe too much or whatever the case may be, and it becomes personal in that way. So you want your owner to try to be business-like and not have emotion around all these kind of things. But the word is that they're just pissed about the Aiyuk deal, that they got pushed against the wall. Nobody made him do it. I've said this all offseason. I don't know if all the owners were drunk. The game is not won at the wide receiver position. The game is won in the trenches. Philadelphia showed you that. And even though they have really good wide receivers, the Eagles showed offensive and defensive lines dominated the Chiefs, and everybody went, oh, my God, and they're trying to get out from all these wide receiver contracts in this offseason. Now, I know Jamar Chase just signed. It's just, I'm not saying the number is going to go down. They signed Higgins. They signed Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow wanted it. We'll see what happens with Cincinnati. But if they signed Trey Hendrickson, then they wouldn't have lost on their offensive and defensive lines either. That makes sense? All right. So where we sit on this whole thing is that he's owed a big check. Now, the 49ers could just, as I said, personally be so pissed off about this whole deal that they're just not going to pay it. They're going to look for a deal. So as I often say, let's look at the other team. So I'm the other team, and I'm going to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. What am I going to trade? Well, he's injured, and I don't know if he's going to come back before midseason. So what I could get for him last year was, remember, last offseason, they couldn't have gotten a first-round pick. Teams were not offering a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe a second-round pick. So now that he's injured and may not play for half the season, I'm not giving you that second-round pick. So let's call it a fourth-round pick. And if he's really, really good for us in that half season he plays, we'll give you a third-round pick. So as I often talk about, it's a stock. You do not want to trade. I'm not the greatest stock trader, but I do know the most basic 101 thing of stock trading. You want to sell high. You want to hold when it's low, right? That's just what it is. Okay, I'm just going to hold it. I don't lose until I actually sell the stock. So right now, Brandon Aiyuk's stock is as low as it possibly could be. And the cap hit is as big as it possibly could be. So again, more dead cap space. If you wait a year, if you can be patient, I know you're going to pay that big money, but if you can wait a year and he shows he's healthy, maybe you're getting a second-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. The cap hit is much less, 12 versus 18, and you're in a much better position. And, oh, by the way, you do need somebody to catch passes. There's an actual game to be played. And so Ricky Pearsall's unproven. Jawan Jennings is better in the role that he's in right now. And you need still a number one wide receiver. Who's that going to be? Good question. It's not Brandon Aiyuk if you trade him. So I know he's hurt. That's a problem. But let's flip it to the other side. Okay, the Niners won't pay the $22.8 million. The team that he's traded to, as I say, left right there on the chalkboard right in the middle, it says left $4 and $110 million. So is the team that's going to assume that contract be fine with paying Brandon Aiyuk $4 and $110 million or $27.5 million per season, and he's injured right now? What owner is going to pass off on that? I mean, the Patriots are extremely desperate. There's no doubt. Extremely desperate. And the kid McMillan out of Arizona just ran a 4.48. He's not a top 5 wide receiver. I don't think that's going to go. I know Jerry ran a 4.55. I get it. But that's the exception to the rule. When everybody brings up, but Jerry ran this, I get it. 4 or 5 guys can still be effective in the league. They are all the time. Jennings ran like a 4.71 coming out. I mean, there's no doubt. It can happen. But I'm just saying I'm the other side because we are so with looking at our team, right? Our team is going to do this or our team is going to do that. I'm like, whoa. What is the other side thinking? The other side's thinking 4 and 110 for an injured guy because there's no negotiation to that. Brandon Aiyuk's getting his money. He's not going to renegotiate the deal that it just took so long to renegotiate, 6-7 months ago? Like, he's not doing that. So they're not redoing a deal here. Brandon Aiyuk saying, look, I'm getting my 4 and 110. So who's going to pay me? I don't really care. But is a team going to assume the 4 and 110 or the $27.5 million a year that it will take to get Aiyuk plus give you a pick? And even if it's not a pick that the Niners like, would they do that? So there's the financial side of it, right? The paying of the money the Niners don't want to do. The 4 and 110 the other team doesn't want to do. His stock is as low as it's going to be. It just doesn't seem like it works out. You know, when things become complicated in life and you try to go, you know what, this is just too complicated. Like my instincts kick in and tell me it's too complicated. My instincts tell me, and watch, I'm going to be wrong in 3, 2, 1. He just got traded. My instincts tell me that it's so complicated right now for both sides that as pissed off as the 49ers are, they're going to have to eat this year because you're the ones who said, or Jed York is the one who rubber stamped this thing, literally the check, to go to Brandon Aiyuk to say, we're going to sign this guy. And maybe he comes back mid-season. Maybe he's really, really good. Maybe it's a little bit before that. But next offseason just seems more logical. Okay, you still don't like the guy. I get it. You're still upset about the contract. I get it. But now he's healthy. You can get more. The other team feels better about that whole situation. If I'm the other team, do I want to trade for a guy who's maybe not going to play for me until mid-season? I got to give up at least a decent pick, and I've got to pay $27.5 million for the next 4 years. It just doesn't make any sense. It just seems too complicated. So that's my stance as we sit. If we come back in, let's see, today's the 19th, in the next 10, 12 days, because that money's due, and they trade him, I'm saying there's a percentage chance to it, but I've said this all off season. It just doesn't seem to make sense. And the closer we get to it, the only logical way they trade him, and it's not really logical, is that Jed York says, I just hate the contract that much. I just hate the contract that much. And I'm not going to pay him another, 22, almost $23 million. Not going to do it. So get your best deal. I know we're going to take another hit. I realize that this is going to put us up well over $100 million in contracts that I have to eat for players no longer playing on my team. But you know what? We're just going to do it in one fell swoop. And then we're going to be fine after that. So that's my thought on Brandon Aiyuk. Give me your thoughts. Would you trade him? But more so, if let's say you're another team, you're New England, and you're desperate, and you have Drake May, and he's your quarterback, and your young quarterback needs a receiver, and you're like, we're that desperate. Yeah, we'll do 4 and 110 for the guy that we're going to do $32 million last year, but he didn't have a blown out knee last year. I can't think of a time, to be honest, and it's still, what do we got, 9:35 in the morning? It's 9:35 in the morning, so maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong on this whole thing, but if I'm the other team and I'm desperate for my quarterback to get a receiver, am I getting, do I at any cost, do I want to pay that guy, give up a draft pick? I'm just saying the other side of things. Okay, Jed's that pissed, right? Jed's that pissed and will not sign off on that check. Okay, go trade him. The only team I can think of off the top of my head that's that desperate, remember, Pittsburgh was desperate. They got DK. There's a number of teams that were desperate in the offseason. Dallas is that desperate to get somebody opposite CeeDee Lamb, but they're in the midst of trying to sign Micah Parsons. So are they going to really throw out a bunch of money? I don't think so. I'm trying to think of logical fits. The only team that comes to mind is New England, that they would be that desperate. But would they is where they pick at 4, I think is too high to take one of the receivers. Maybe they push back. They've got a high second round pick, so maybe that's where they get the receiver, whatever. That's a deeper receiver draft, not as flashy at the top of the draft. But I'm thinking to myself, what team in the history of the league or even sports has given up a lot to pay a lot to a guy who was coming off an injury like this? Like, if the guy's healthy, we're having a totally different conversation. They're pissed. They're upset. They think that they probably, they're having buyer's remorse on Brandon Aiyuk. I get it. If he's healthy, I think they would trade him. But I'm sitting here right now going, who's trading for a guy, paying him 110 over 4, which is 27.5 a season, which isn't nothing, and saying to themselves, okay, well, we'll just wait till midseason. We're just that desperate. We're the New England Patriots. We're just that desperate. And then back from a 49er standpoint, to jump back into their shoes, if that's the case, okay, I'm New England. I'm paying him 110. I'm taking the risk. I'm not giving you. You're not getting a second-round pick. You're probably not getting a third-round pick. You might get a fourth-round pick that could turn into a third-round pick if the guy's really good. So, anyway, there's my thought on Aiyuk. Give me your thoughts. John Holmes says Bradbury signed with the Patriots. Again, he might be better than the numbers say. He was like the 28th ranked center. He was worse than our guy Jake Brendel. So I wasn't really upset to see that. In fact, they were talking about Seattle because he was Darnold center last year, and I was hoping Seattle would sign the guy because even though he was a former high pick, he just wasn't very good. So, exactly right. You nailed it right in the head, Mark Graves. Would be easier for teams to trade for Aiyuk if they knew when he was coming back. We're just not hearing anything. And early in the offseason, I heard, well, he's ahead of schedule. He's ahead of schedule. But I mean, what does that mean? Is that ahead of the 8th game? Is that ahead of the 5th game? Is that if I'm a team, and you and I talk about this all the time when it comes to players, the thing that is the worst in sports is not knowing. Like if a certain player is out on the field, on the court, on the ice, and you go, maybe he's good. Maybe he's really good. Maybe he's not. Like, I hate inconsistent players. If you suck, at least I know you suck. If you're really good, okay, I can put you in the bank and I know what you're going to give me. But if you're the inconsistent guy going, you know what, especially on a basketball court, just because it's the easiest way to say it, hey, you got 20 and 10 for me last night, and then tonight you got me 5 points and 2 boards. Like what? Did you go out and party last night and you just suck tonight? Like what? I can't stand that. So when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, when a team is planning for next season, what's the plan? Well, a plan of wide receiver is when Brandon Aiyuk gets healthy, and if Brandon Aiyuk is good like he used to be, owner of the team is going, what are you, insane? Like, I know we're desperate. We're New England, and we're desperate, but I'd rather take a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round who's healthy rather than not knowing. Not knowing is the worst. Is your quarterback going to be good? An inconsistent quarterback drives you crazy. Like, oh, he just showed it. He's really good. Most people, when a guy shows that he can play, they get excited for that player and they think he's going to do that all the time. And again, another show philosophy is these guys in professional sports and women wouldn't be where they were if they couldn't flash it every once in a while. Like, there it is. And people, these executives will draft on potential a lot of times, and then they wonder why they get burned. But I saw it. Yeah, but you didn't see it enough. That's why the combine is fool's gold. Like, this guy runs a 4 this and does this and does that. If it matches up with the tape, you draft the guy. If all of a sudden he's this workout wonder because he had the answers to the test and then you draft him and he has inconsistent tape, that's on you. Because you're like, well, we can pull it out of him. Yeah, but that's why guys fail, is because you see him. Like, that's why Andrew Wiggins would drive you through a wall. It was like, I saw Wiggins help them win a championship in 22, and that's the Wiggins we're going to get every night, right? No. A lot of times you're going to get the guy who's half asleep. That's why the Jimmy Butler thing, to just go back to the Warriors for a minute, has been so great. Generally speaking, I know what I'm getting from Jimmy Butler. I'm going to get effort. I'm going to get accountability. He's going to get to the line a bunch of times. Like last night, that was no surprise what Jimmy Butler did for the Warriors. Like, that's what Jimmy Butler does. Oh, Steph Curry's out of lineup? Okay, gotcha. Like, you knew that was going to happen last night. So inconsistency kills you. And so when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, if you think about the other team, which I like to do, because we make all these great trades for our own teams, right? Oh, yeah, this would be a great trade. We get this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. Yeah, and then the other general manager gets fired. Like, you have to look at it a lot of times from the other side. And the other side says, who's giving Aiyuk 110, 4 for 110, 27.5, and he's not going to be ready till midseason? And the most desperate team I can think of is the Patriots. And Robert Kraft is stupid, and he's going to have to approve something like this. This isn't going at the general manager level. This is, hey, Mr. Kraft, we have an opportunity to get Brandon Aiyuk. It's going to cost us 4 and 110, 27.5 for the next 4 years. He is a number 1 wide receiver The only problem is he has a blown out knee. What was that last part? Sorry, I'm getting older. I didn't hear that last part. He's got a blown out knee. Oh, really? How about no? I'm the owner. I'm going to pay 110. I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm that desperate. Drake May needs a receiver. I don't think there's another desperate team out there, but Robert Kraft isn't dumb. So long way of saying I don't think he's going to go anywhere, because as mad as the Niners might be, or in particular Jed might be, and struggle with rubber stamping that $22.8 million check, I don't think another team's going to say, can't wait to get a hold of a guy who's got a bad knee that I've got to pay $110 million to over the last 4. So we'll see. I'll jump out because BA is always a hot button topic, so I'll talk about that. But what's left, I've already done. So we are in episode 92. Golden State bounce back. Dray Dpoy, playoff Jimmy last night. Great win for the Warriors over the Bucks. Case for the 49ers I gave you. Aiyuk, we just discussed. 22.8 is due April 1st. What's left is 4-1-10. What's left was I went over the PFF numbers. There were a few guys that I think the 49ers could go after and would make a lot of sense. Charles Omenihu, who is still out there. A guy like C.J. Mosley, potentially. I like Julian Blackmon, the safety that the Colts had, and the 49ers had him in last year. I wouldn't mind an adult in the room at free safety. So there are a few guys. Tevin Jenkins was in Seattle yesterday. He is hurt a lot. But if you could look at a situation where you say, look, we'll give you an incentive-laden contract, I don't know if he would do that, but he's only 27, and that would be a solid pickup. So, yeah, the lights are coming on. It's 2 a.m., and you're scrambling and desperate, but there are a few deals out there. The question would be, the 49ers, who have gone special teams crazy, would they sign any of these guys? Are they just done and completely looking at the draft and going, okay, we got 11 picks. We can do this. That would be a lot of faith in John and Kyle. And while I have faith in John and Kyle, 11 picks aren't going to hit. 5 picks, maybe. I think you might get a 50-50. And I'm not sure they're all going to hit in the first year. So that's a lot of pressure to put on your people behind the scenes to say, we've got to hit this draft. Yeah, you got 11. You might hit 5. If you're lucky, you might hit 5, maybe 4, maybe 1. Who knows? All right, so that's where we are. Before I get out to Melvin's contract, which is Bob Melvin, which I think is a really interesting topic that all of a sudden just kind of popped up today. We're going to move off the Niners, so let me make sure that I'm answering everything. Just ask Kraft while he's getting a massage. Solid. Very solid point. That thing just kind of went away. Well, it must be nice to have money. Oh, I screwed up here. I screwed up again here. I screwed up again here. That must be really nice. Why do we have to be so completely rational? I would agree with you. Completely rational. I would agree with you there. I'm being rational and teams aren't. It's a good call by Vernon. Browns are desperate at wide receiver. I understand that. And they were apparently in on him last year. Jimmy Haslam is their owner. He's not as grounded. He is not as rational. But here's what I would say. And look, I don't know anything about Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns. I know nothing about him. I do know this, that you know how Jed is being much more careful about contracts now, and he's going to pay a bunch of guys not to play for the 49ers? If I'm the Browns, I could be wrong, but after the deal I gave to Deshaun Watson, I don't know how much risk I'm willing to take. And I know that Deshaun Watson and Brandon Aiyuk are far different stories. But essentially what I'm saying here is that you're either a chance taker on contracts or you're not. They already took a massive swing at Deshaun Watson. That couldn't have gone more disastrous. I guess it could have gone more disastrous, but pretty damn close to as disastrous as it could possibly be. And I don't know how many swings he's going to want to take at taking more chances, but maybe, I don't know, Jimmy Haslam. Like I can tell you about the Niners or some other teams that I've covered or been around, but I don't know about the Browns. Would they be desperate enough? There were GMs back in the day, and I'm just thinking of Isaiah Thomas, for example, and you could always take advantage of Isaiah Thomas when he's with the Knicks. And it was just like, oh yeah, he's that's just a dumpster fire of a team. So let's just, Isaiah will do it. Like the life commercials. Mikey will eat it. He'll eat anything. Like Isaiah Thomas was just so bad, and it was like, he'll do it. I don't know if the Browns are that stupid. Now, Andrew Berry runs the Browns, and Andrew Berry is not stupid. Now, I know the contract with Watson, they were that desperate, the Browns. And you know this, you've seen it. Like there's that jersey of all the quarterbacks that the Browns have had over the years, and it's just an atrocious number since like Kosar or something like that. And it's like Tim Couch and I mean you just go down Johnny Manziel, and they got all those guys on a jersey. It's funny if it wasn't so sad. And I'm not a Browns fan, so it is funny. So they were so desperate for a quarterback that they just guaranteed all the money to Deshaun Watson, looked past all of his off the field things, all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's just an indicator that the Browns are just going to take risks no matter what. Logic would tell you that the Browns would say, okay, we really screwed that one up. Let's be a little bit more conservative, a lot more conservative in the way that we look at contracts now. So maybe they're just overall stupid. Maybe they are that team that you can just dump anything to. Nuclear reactor, let's go to the Browns, whatever. So maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm 100% wrong because I keep saying to myself, okay, the Patriots would be that desperate team. But then you look at the Browns and, yeah, you're right. They might be that desperate. But I still think, okay, I'm Jimmy Haslam. I'm taking $110 million over 4, and I got to give up a pick. Like, ugh, don't like it. But I could be wrong. Baker Mayfield bounced back. There you go. Yeah, you're right. Mayfield was on that thing, and he was terrible. But takes a minute. Let's see. I agree. The owner of the Browns now afraid of big risk. The Browns on brand of the deal would be done. I'm sure that the 49ers. I'm not sure of this. But if they've probably hit the pedal to the metal a little bit because they owe them on the first to at least see what's out there. But I'm kind of with you in regards to they've known this thing was coming up for a long time. And if teams, this is the other thing too, if teams smell your desperation, like I always use this bar analogy because that was just me at 2 a.m. in the morning and they could smell my desperation from the moment I walked into the bar to the moment I left. So if teams smell your desperation in the league, you're absolutely got to get rid of this guy. They realize, oh, okay, Jed York doesn't want to pay the paycheck. But now I look at this situation and say, okay, we're going to give you, a 4 and a 6 or whatever, just something that's just outrageous, or a 7 or whatever the case, or a conditional this or that. I just look at that 4 and 110 that's left and I say, I just don't think a team's going to do that for an injured guy. And you can come up with one of these off the top of my head. I just can't think of a trade in which a guy clearly was this injured and a team looked past it. A team looked past it and just said, nah, it's okay. Like teams will pass guys on physicals. I'm not saying that. Like we just want the guy. We're going to, if he's got an issue or whatever, we'll deal with it. But coming back from the severity of the injury that Dray And Aiyuk has, I can't think of a team to say, yeah, give me the broken down guy. And yeah, we're cool paying him 110. And oh, by the way, we're going to give you some kind of compensation. It just doesn't seem to make logical sense, but teams get desperate. There's no question. What is this? I'm sorry, but I have to go. I do have to go random. Can't forget our restaurant made the biggest burger weighing at 250 pounds. How did we get to that? What happened? I have no idea. But there you go. Let's see. Okay, so let's get to Melvin's contract. We spent a lot of time on the by the way, somebody just hit me up. J49 hit me up. Absolutely. We did hit the Warriors at the top. You can see right there, great bounce back win. Want to make sure I acknowledge that. We did do the GS bounce back at the top. Dray, Dpoy. We played a little bit of Steve Kerr for you as well. Playoff Jimmy appeared, so we did get into a little bit of Warriors. I always say this. You can either go back now if you want to hear some Warriors, or I will post this right after the show, just like I do with the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. But also, I'll put chapters. So if you go to YouTube and you join John Lund Unleashed, or you go to Bay Area Sports Collective, do both, and you join there, what happens is I will put the chapters up, and then you can click to whatever you want. But yeah, let's acknowledge the Warriors before I move on to baseball. Absolutely. He was absolutely great. Draymond Green made the case that he could be the Dpoy, and he might be able to. Don't worry about it. I see your spell checker. We all see Giannis. It's okay. Don't worry about it. J49's like, it's okay. I don't mind that. I understood. I completely understand. By the way, Cleveland Spiders. Did somebody hit up Cleveland Spiders right there? That should have been their name. Oh, hey. Let's see. All right, let's move over to Bob Melvin. Let me just show you this. John Shea is absolutely great. And I told you, we got to get John Shea on the show. But John Shea yesterday, this is just part of his thing. This is Matt Chapman, by the way. I didn't sign a 6-year extension thinking he was going to play for another manager. So I hope they do what's right and extend him. He deserves it. That's John Shea from John Shea. Hey, make sure that you're following John. No longer with the Chronicle, but he is awesome as a national baseball writer. So let me just go on that, on this premise right here. This is Matt Chapman. I didn't sign a 6-year extension thinking I was going to play for another manager. So I hope they do what's right and extend him. He deserves it. Now, let me just go back for a second on the relationship with Bob Melvin. As a guy, Bob Melvin is awesome. I've known him almost my entire career being in the Bay Area, which goes back 15 years. When he was with the A's, I was with the station that carried the A's game and interacted with him a lot.
I went down to spring training in 2016 with my son, George, who's now 21. And George at that time was what, 12, whatever he was, floppy-haired kid, whatever. Bob Melvin was incredibly nice to him, introduced him to players. He could have been like, who's this little kid in my dugout? Like, what are you doing? Like, he's an awesome guy. I love him. When he was with the Padres and they were going through all those problems, every time the Padres came into town, Bob Melvin came on Pop and I's show and was incredible. And we would ask him, like, what the hell is going on? How come you can't win close games? How come this team is underachieving? All that kind of stuff. Bob was very cool about it. See him at games. He says hello. Saw him at Cal basketball games. He said hello. Like, so personally speaking, I really like Bob Melvin. But I have a professional job to do, fairly, kind of, a little bit, not really, professional job to do. And so if I see something, I just got to say the way I feel about it. And I like Bob. I like him a lot. But his last year in San Diego with the Padres wasn't good, to say the least. And that was a mutual parting of the ways. I acknowledge the fact that he was incredible in Oakland with the A's in not so ideal circumstances. Incredible. And then last year, though, with the Giants coming off that, I didn't do that in right order. Incredible Oakland, has won tons of games, goes over to the Padres, has managed tons of teams. All the players that I've ever talked to in regards to Bob Melvin absolutely love him, play extremely hard for him. You just saw the quote from Matt Chapman. Everybody loves Bob. If there was a show, everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Bob. I love Bob. But you've got to earn contract extensions. And so last year, the whatever you want to say, it can be Farhan's fault, this guy's fault, that guy's fault, whatever, players play, coaches coach. Bob Melvin's got to win. Like this year, fourth place, you don't get an extension for fourth place, and I don't care how good of a guy you are. You don't. Like last year, unacceptable. I know they were shorthanded. They didn't have everything they needed, whatever the case may be. I don't know the things behind the circumstances, this, that, or the other, but Bob Melvin's the manager. And when you take that baton, when you take that paycheck, when you sit in that place in the dugout, it's a bottom line business. It's really, really easy. It's a bottom line business when it comes to that. Players, you can, your contract is too big. It doesn't mean you're not good. Or there's all sorts of reasons why a guy wouldn't be on a team. But as far as a manager is concerned, there's a reason why Gabe Kapler, he was an annoying guy and all these different things, whatever. But the reason why Gabe Kapler wasn't around anymore is because he didn't win games. Because if he had won 107 games like he did in 2021, you couldn't get Gabe Kapler out of the dugout no matter what you did. So a fourth place manager doesn't get an extension. There's no logic in that. And as we've seen from the Dodgers, and I'll get into Sasaki in just a second because I've got that on the board. And I'm sorry that we have to talk about them, but they're 2-0. Sasaki wasn't incredibly great. They didn't even play Freddie Freeman yesterday. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. They're going to be really, really good unless they have a rash of injuries. And hell, they had a rash of injuries last year, especially with the rotation. They pick up, a couple of guys, Jack Flaherty, a couple of other guys, and they end up winning a World Series, and their rotation wasn't even really good. And they add Snell to it, and they add Sasaki to it, and they add Snell to it, or not Snell, Ohtani to it, and all this. So they're probably going to be better. I'm sorry to tell you, but you already know this in the back of your mind. They're going to be better. Now, Arizona, they had Corbin Burns, and they were pretty good. Logic tells you they're probably going to be better. You look at the Padres. I don't know if they'll be better, but they might be just as good. I'm not real sure. I mean, if they don't get off to a great start, maybe they become sellers. There's discussion that they can move Dylan Cease, somebody like that. So maybe the Padres are better, maybe they're not. But on paper, where the game is not played, last time I checked. Nope, I just checked again. It's not. Where the game is not played, the Padres look better. So for Bob Melvin to get that extension, as much as I love Bob Melvin as a person, for Bob Melvin to get that extension, this has got to be a playoff team. Not like, they were one game away, here's an extension. It's a playoff team. And that's the determination. I don't care. Like Pop and I used to get in this conversation. He'd be like, well, 500 means something. It means nothing. You're either in the playoffs or you're not. So Bob Melvin doesn't get an extension at 82 and 80, and they were close. Bob Melvin doesn't get an extension at 88 and 74, and they're close. Bob Melvin gets an extension no matter, I don't care how many games you got to win. You got to be a playoff team. That's the minimum bar. And we got into this yesterday a little bit, and I don't have to reset or retread this whole thing. But if you're new in the room today, first of all, welcome. But second of all, the Giants are selling 10% of the team. And the first thing out of Larry Bear's mouth was nothing about improving the team. And I don't mean directly paying players. I'm not saying that. Are the baseball facilities going to be improved? Is the ballpark going to alter the ballpark again so that hitters will come here? Nah, it's about the facade. It's about the front of the stadium is going to get better. Willie Mays Plaza is going to be a lot cooler. And those people who pay a ton of money in those suites, we're going to make those suites even better. And we're going to add more suites. And we're going to, revenue. I get it. It's a business. But if you lead with that, what you're telling your fans is we're a business more than we're a baseball team. And I told you this yesterday. They're a business, not a baseball team. They're a wolf, which is the business. The engine is that. The sheep's clothing is the baseball team. It could be anything. And I've told you this a million times with owners and nobody believes it, but I've talked to tons of them who say this is just another one of my businesses. And the Giants again and again and again show us and tell us that's what they think. And that's okay. You can run your business however you see fit. But there are other teams and people get mad at them. The Dodgers are screwing the system. They're cheating. They just want to win at a really high level. So it makes people mad that the Dodgers try to win at this really high level, and then the Giants are a business. And the way I know that is because the first things out of Larry Baer's mouth were, we're going to make the Willie Mays Plaza better. We're going to make the experience better for suite holders. We're going to not. This isn't so that we can go sign an Aaron Judge to a big contract. Like those are the things that from that release or the presser that I read and I saw, and that's what alerts me to all these things. So to just bring it back to Bob Melvin, you got to be a playoff team. And I don't know that the Giants are dedicated to being a playoff team. Now, having said that, as I point out there as well, Ray solid below Bob Melvin. Robbie Ray looks really good. That looks like that might have been a good trade because anything that would have got Mitch Haniger out of town was good with me. But then all of a sudden, Robbie Ray looks solid. He was solid again yesterday. And Justin Verlander, we've talked about a lot. Maybe he's just a freak at 42. Coming off a neck injury and all that. He's had a couple of Tommy Johns, and he's still throwing 96, 97 and burying the slider in the dirt. He looks like he might be good. There's 3 guys out of your rotation. Birdsong, if he's not in the starting rotation, I don't know what you're smoking or drinking or looking at because he should be in the starting rotation. He's one of your best 4. There's no question about it. So he should be in there, or else don't have spring training and have jobs open, like because he's won a job in the rotation. He should. 5th guy, maybe it's Harrison. Probably Hicks, which I don't like, but it's probably going to be that. And I need to relegate myself that rather than coming on here every single day and saying he needs to be a 7th inning guy throwing 102 to a Duvall throwing 100 to a Walker nasty. I mean, that should be your 7, 8, 9, but he'll probably start in the rotation, be a 5 and fly guy, frustrate you again, run out of gas. I mean, that's what it looks like. So look, they might have, let me go just stay positive for a minute. They might have a really good rotation. They might. There's some really good arms in there. Offensively is a whole different story, but Bob Melvin has got to be a playoff manager, and that's what it is. Robbie Ray has been solid. I really like it, but when I see the statements like I did from the Giants who are selling 10% of their team, and most of the talk is about business and suites and Willie Mays Plaza, and the only question that's baseball related says, we're not doing this so we can sign Aaron Judge. What are you, insane? He didn't say it like that. I added the last part. But it's not so that we can improve facilities so that we can get better Latin players. It's not so that we can improve facilities so that we can finally get a Japanese player, which is a great pipeline for the first time since 2015. That's not what was discussed. Better suites, which means we're going to charge more for the suites. Look at Willie Mays Plaza, which is the front of the stadium, which is basically like, look at how beautiful this is. As I've told you many times, and this just reinforces that point, the star of the San Francisco Giants is not a player, it's a stadium. And that's how they view it. So what is going to keep the turnstiles moving? What is going to keep the revenue up that we're going to keep, not spend? Because they're not even to the line to spend. Anyway, I don't be negative about the Giants. Don't be negative. Don't be negative. Don't be negative. Okay. One thing along those fronts, did I not put this on the sheet today? Melvin contract, Ray solid, Dodgers 2-0, Suzuki, no bet madness. I thought I had this in my original chalkboard today, but I didn't. Speaking of the Giants, before we move off the Giants, and I'll hit up the chat line on this to see what people are saying about my negativity, which I don't need to be. By the way, Fossey, thank you very much for bringing us back down to earth. 17-5, 17-5. You know, I'm not a big spring training guy. It means nothing once they hit the reset, but there you go. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for recentering me. Because, hey, give them credit. 17-5 is 17-5. And it means something until it means nothing and they reset it. But let's just, come on. Larry Kruger and I, hopefully on your Friday nights, and we're going to make this not a negative show. All right. We've discussed it, him and I, And we're calling it something chug or something, but we're going to just hang out, drink beers, kind of like a Manning cast. And once the season starts, we're going to do every Friday night, him and I, throughout the Giants game, kind of a Manning cast kind of a thing. And it's just going to be fun. So grab some beers, grab some snacks, whatever. And we're going to have we've developed, his son is very smart at all this stuff, Kevin, his son, a thing that will be on the screen. So him and I will be on the screen, and then you'll be able to watch the game at the same time. Plus, just put it in front of your TV, and we're just going to have a really good time. And we're going to hang out, and there'll be no negativity, and it's going to be like a Manning cast, and we'll mention the game every once in a while, but it's not going to be like a hardcore breakdown of the game. And we're going to do it every Friday night. We've got a great response on it. We did it talked about it on his channel the other night. So keep that in mind. Once the season starts, we're going to do that every Friday night. We'll just have some fun with it. No negativity. Have fun. Let me kick this up. Bob Melvin got a good manager. Both said spring training was huge for them to get wins and get the right mindset. Look, I like Bob Melvin, man, but I'm just saying sports is a bottom line business. It's not, well, you're a really nice guy and we're getting an extension. I love Bob. I really do. I said love. I don't like him. I love him. He's a great guy. But you got to make the playoffs. You got to make the playoffs this year. And I know that they're not giving you everything, but you got to make the playoffs. That's how you get an extension. I don't see an extension for a guy who finishes in fourth place. You can't. How could you sell that to your fan base? I love Bob. Bob loves being here. Bob's a Bay Area guy. Bob went to Cal. Bob played for the Giants. And you can see, I was at the press conference when Bob got hired. I mean, Bob was just like, he's giddy, right, to be here. He wants to win more than you and I do. But the bottom line to the whole thing is that you cannot in any way, shape, or form, we finished in fourth place, and here's our press conference to announce Bob Melvin's got a 5-year extension. What? Finished in fourth place? I like the guy too, man. How cheap is your grandma? That cheap? Pretty cheap? Is it pretty cheap? Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we'll get that fixed. I'll make sure that we'll get that fixed because we were messing around with that thing today, and I was waiting for a response. So if that's screwing you up and it's pissing people off, then we're doing away with that. Can't have that. You have a brick in Willie Mays Plaza? Very cool. Very nice. Okay. Let's see. I'm thinking that the minority 10% owner can add a couple of pads to the bullpen fences. I just want to bring them in. Like, I know that that's an old bit. I just want to bring them in. Like, if you can't get, like, you're in the baseball business, and this tells me, like I said, this is not about baseball business. This is about business, and I'm fine with it. You run your business how you want. But what I'm saying is that if this was more about baseball business, they would look at the ballpark itself and say, look, this is keeping us from being competitive. And the Giants would counter with saying, well, we did win in 10, 12, and 14 with pitching, and you did. But that's when you drafted Tim Lincecum, Matt Cain, and Madison Bumgarner in consecutive drafts. Is that happening anytime soon? It's not. So, hey, it was great. You caught lightning in a bottle, but the reality of the situation is if you can't get, I don't know, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. If you can't generally get hitters to come here, and Willie Adames did, but you can't get left-handed sticks to come here. And if that's a problem, and as we talk about constantly about the pipeline that the Giants need to be competitive, Japan, no pipeline. Latin players, lots of them, but you haven't had a homegrown one hit big since what, Pablo? I mean, let's give it up to, Duvall, who's looks like he's going to be back on that track. As of last year, like, ugh. But he's coming back, so that would be one, no doubt. But you need to hit him again and again and again. So these pipelines of ways that you get players, and I use Colorado as a perfect example in the exact opposite way, which is they can't get pitching. And they can't help that it's thin air and the ball's going to fly out of the ballpark. You can help this. You can fix this. You can make it so that players, especially left-handed hitters, but hitters in general, will come here. I used this comparison yesterday. If you had a ballpark that was at least average as far as hitting the ball out, Pete Alonso would probably be a Giant. Well, maybe not because they're cheap. But Pete Alonso, in theory, would be a Giant. But before you could say no to him, he said no to you because he's looking at the ballpark going, I'm doing a 1-year deal. I'm doing a 1-year deal here, just so that I can get back out on the market next year. And that's what Pete Alonso did with the Mets. He did a 1-year deal. I know that it's got extra years on it, but it's a 1 year and then it's an opt-out. And he decided to go back to New York with Juan Soto in the lineup, who would never sign here as a left-handed power hitter. And you'd say to yourself, all right, well, maybe we get Pete Alonso as a right-handed hitter. No. The park is saying no chance. No chance. So if you're part of this $400 million that the Giants are going to get by selling 10% of the team, They should look at the ballpark again. We can't be competitive, but that's dismissed. No. We got to make Willie Mays Plaza look better. No. We got to make the suites more and better and more money and more revenue. I get it, but all I'm asking for, and I don't think it's too much, is just kind of a happy medium. Like, yeah, increase the revenue. You want to make the ballpark look better from the front and the Willie Mays Plaza and improve that? I don't think it's going to make a difference. It sure is not going to make a difference from a baseball standpoint, but knock yourself out. The ballpark is already the best ballpark, in my opinion, in all of baseball. And I've been to just about every single one of them. PNC Park, beautiful. I mean, anyone that you want to talk about that's a great ballpark, I've been to it. And on the old school ones, Fenway, Wrigley, all of them, they're awesome. Fenway and Wrigley are like dropped in the middle of a neighborhood. They're incredible. But for what this park offers, maybe it needs some improvements in terms of what you believe in suites. I wouldn't know that. I'm not that 1%er. Okay, if you say so, great. You want to increase revenue? I get it. You want to make the front of the state? I don't know what that's going to cost to improve Willie Mays Plaza. I got news for you. And it's probably going to generate revenue is what it's going to do. But just in general, the front of the ballpark's fine and great. I don't have an issue with it. I've broadcast from there plenty of times. I don't know if that's that big of a deal. I would like you to improve baseball facilities. So maybe you're not going to sign the next Aaron Judge, but maybe you could develop the next Aaron Judge and use some of that money for baseball development somehow. So anyway, all right, stop it. I already did that yesterday. I don't want to do it again. As far as the Dodgers are concerned, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. They're 2-0. They win this morning 6-3 over the Cubs. Sasaki, kind of like it reminded me. I watched the highlights of this. It reminded me of Yamamoto a year ago. Remember, Yamamoto a year ago in Japan just felt too much pressure. They're in the Tokyo Dome, walked a lot of guys, was wild. And then he got back to the States, and it took him a few starts. But he was fine by the end of the year. It was great in game one. What a difference a year makes. Sasaki's first 5 pitches were like all at or near 100 miles per hour. He was burying the slider. He was just wild. He was a little too amped up. So in watching that, it's depressing because you're like, these guys won the World Series. And they added Blake Snell, and they added Roki Sasaki, and Yamamoto is going to be better. Yamamoto only pitched 90 innings last year. And Ohtani didn't pitch at all, as you well know. So it's like that's what they're adding, all that stuff, and they already won the damn thing. Ugh, it's depressing to watch that. All right, so we got that. And then one last thing, and I just want to ask you this question. What I wrote down at the bottom there was no bet madness. And I'm just curious to know this, and we can talk more about this tomorrow. I just want to do this really quickly. Hit me up at John Lund Radio. Hit me up, John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. However you want to hit me up. I'm curious of this. If there was, like we've all got our brackets, and I told you this. I fill out one bracket. That's it. Years and years ago, friends of mine, we've been doing this for years. It's for bragging rights. It's a few bucks. It's a decent amount of money in there. And I just do one. Because like my son, he does fantasy, and he does tons of different leagues. He does tons of different brackets. People can do whatever they want. Fill it out however you want. You can do 20 different brackets. I don't care. I just do one. I just do one bracket, and that's the way it goes. I usually suck. I'm generally out by the first weekend, but I still like to do it. And then, basically donate to charity a couple $100 every year to do this. But I was having a conversation with somebody last night that if there was no betting, so if there's no betting involved, you don't do a bracket, you don't bet on the games, all that kind of stuff. And I can tell you this, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. I don't know that there's a better thing in sports, and I've covered everything you can cover in terms of a finals type of a deal. So the Stanley Cup Finals, the Final Four in the I've covered Final Four, NBA Finals, World Series, Super Bowl, just about anything that you could cover, I have covered in person. I don't know that there's a better day or weekend, certainly, than being in a place like Vegas and I've been in like those suites that they have. So you're in a sports book and then they have those ones and you're like, oh, look at those guys. I wish I was up there. I've been in one of those, not because, and I'm not bragging, not because of me. I didn't pay for it. I don't have the money to do that kind of thing. A person has actually invited me to say, hey, come up there. And you got the people catering it. And you got all the TVs. And then, you can walk downstairs and do the bets. And nowadays you can obviously do it on your phone. But back in the day when you actually had to go to the counter. So you're like in the MGM, right? And they got these suites. It's incredible. I don't know that there's a better day than the first couple of days of the tournament or even the first weekend of the tournament when you're down in Vegas sitting in one of those places. I just don't know that it gets any better than that. But if there was no betting element to this stuff, so you're not betting, you're not filling out a bracket. we generally, I don't, you might, in this area, in the Bay Area of California, in Northern California, we don't do a ton of college basketball talk. And I like college basketball, but because I know I'm going to fill out this bracket and donate $200 every year to this bracket that I lose, I start watching in late February, early March. I try to figure out some teams. I don't watch a ton of college basketball just because we don't talk about it a ton on our shows. But if there was no element of betting, would you watch it? Would you watch it? Like, maybe, I certainly don't think you would watch it to the level that you watch it, but like tomorrow, like we're all going to be watching it. What time is it right now? So 10, 11. So what games start? What, like 9:30 West Coast time tomorrow, Pacific time tomorrow? Like right around now, we're all going to be totally enthralled with it. And if you're in an office and you're in a cube environment or whatever, like we all do that. Now it's like on our phones, on our iPads, it's not, it used to be before, like where somebody got a TV in their office, like not now, like you're sitting there on your phone watching it. And then in real time, you're watching your bracket. I mean, they've made it amazing now. So I'm just curious, and we can talk more about that tomorrow, but your level of interest just in the game itself, because they have done such a tremendous job in the betting element, in the bracket element. Like everybody does this. My wife knows, just like me, and like very little about college basketball. We'll fill out a bracket against each other. I lied. There's another bracket, but I'll keep the same bracket. But like we'll do a dinner, like 4 dinner bracket, even though it comes out of the same place. It's just principle. Like we'll just, okay, you're taking me to dinner and you got to drive and you got to do everything and everything's on you and everything like that. And we'll just do brackets. And she'll crush me at it. And I'll do a little bit of research and she'll do none whatsoever and be like, all right, there's my bracket. Take like 32 seconds to do. And I'm like, what? And I lose every time. All right, what do we have? Yeah, we changed the I'm glad that who came with that? Tacky came with that. Are the ads just popping up left and right because I don't see them on my screen. So if they are and they're annoying, let me know and we'll adjust that back. I apologize. I don't want people leaving because of advertisements in the middle of the show. And I don't mean Dr. Riopel. That's a different advertisement. I'm talking about YouTube takes it over sometimes and pops these spots up. And so I'll make sure that doesn't happen if it's annoying people and making you leave, because I don't want that. Ooh, people are talking about homers. Let's see, what else do we have today? Oh, that's the greatest drop of all time. I'm Dave Fleming, and I hate kids. Or it was like, I hate your kids or something like that. I love Fleming, man. He's the best. Let's see. What were the odds there? See, that's not bad. It's not about, hi, Alex True. I don't know if we've had you in the room before. Thank you for making the time. I just put 50 on the Giants to win the World Series and another 50 on the Texans. On the Rangers, Let's go Bochy. Look, I like odds. I mean, that's the one thing too. And again, don't listen to my betting advice. Take the opposite advice. You'll make a lot of money. But right now, like, does anybody know what the Niners are, for example? Like, I got to imagine that they've had the worst odds they've had in forever. So I was thinking last night, maybe I'll do that. Don't know that I'm going to be putting 50 on the Giants. The problem with the Giants right now, and it's this part isn't their fault. The Dodgers are so damn good. Sorry. The Dodgers are so damn good that now you're not dealing with the teams in your division. You are, because you're playing them, but you're dealing with all the other teams that are fighting for a wild card. So yeah, you play in the NL West technically, but what you do is now you're against all the teams in the NL East. So now Philly, Atlanta, any of those teams there, the Mets. You look at the Central. That's not a great division, but now it's the Cubs and the Cardinals and and the Brewers. It's all these other teams now because it's like, well, you're not winning the West. I'm trying, man. I'm glad that you popped up the spring training standings, because you know what? While I discard them quite a bit, unless there's an injury, you can't do that. By the way, good news on Jung-Hoo Lee. It looks like, at least according to Bob Melvin, who doesn't deserve an extension until they get to the playoffs. According to Bob Melvin, they expect him for opening day. So that's great news. Hi, Papa J. It is tremendous to see you. Hello. I don't want negativity. I'm trying to be positive. And like I said on this Friday show that Krug and I are going to do, we have made a pact with each other that doesn't matter. We're not going to be negative. It's just going to be a Friday night hangout, chug some beers, watch some games. We're going to have this thing on the screen so you can watch the Giants game at the same time. It's going to be really, really cool. We'll do it Friday nights once the season starts. But we've made a pact that we're not going to be negative. Yeah, that's basically what it's going to be. It's probably going to be a drunken thing. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to be negative about it. I told him, I don't want to go on a Friday night and just bitch and make it Friday nights to bitch about the Giants. Like, I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. Oh, I see. So I've got that too. The premium thing. So if you pay premium YouTube, you don't have the ads. Is that right? No, I don't pay for. Oh, I see what I'm saying. Okay, I get you. I get you. I was confused for a minute. Your bracket is not already burned. But that's the funniest thing. North Carolina, they don't deserve to be in, and then they just blew the hell out of San Diego State last night. And like I said, I don't get too worried about Tuesday, like the Tuesday thing in Dayton. I'm so against it because I think it's so stupid that I don't even fill out my bracket until after that. Plus 1,600 per FanDuel. Yeah, that's their highest odds in a long time. So yeah, I mean, I'd throw a couple bucks on them. Why not? I don't know. $50 on Florida win the tourney. What's your odds on that? What kind of odds did you get on that for Florida? Okay, let's see. Yeah, and she'll probably beat you. Like, I don't know if you guys do a one-on-one. It's kind of fun, and you have a little bit of fun, and then she'll watch the games because she's got a bracket and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, she'll always finish better than you because we overthink it. We're like, well, we're gonna have this upset and this upset, and then that upset you took to like the Elite Eight, lost in the first round, and then you always go back and you're like, why did I do that? What was I thinking? Yeah, I think they changed this. That's the only reason I asked today. Because I think Vegas, as of yesterday morning, caught up, but I could be wrong. You know what? This is a great point. What should we call that? The new Friday show, Long Balls and Beers. Long Balls and Beers. I'm just seeing if that grows on me a little bit. Yeah, that's not bad. I do know that Krug and I were just kind of throwing something together, like something about chugging, like the chug or the this or the that. I don't know. We're still working on the name. So if you have a thought about Friday night Giants, but we're not going to be negative and we're going to drink beers and it's going to be like a Manning cast, that's that kind of a thing. What do you think we should call it? And we're not. It's not going to be negative. We're just not going to do it. Just not going to do it. We're not. The 16-16 was fantastic. Alabama State comes behind, takes the lead. St. Francis tied to Alabama State. That was a good game. I got to admit, that was a good game. Let's see. I'm only watching. My school's in it. They didn't win the conference tournament, but I will watch 4-4. So yeah, that's it. The thing is if you fill out a bracket, it's just going to suck you in. The one thing I do that's really, really smart, and I know it's the same old thing, 5 versus 12, all the kind of things, 16's beaten 1 once, all that kind of stuff. I went to Utah State and they stink in the tournament, but they actually won a game last year and then they got beat by Purdue. Everybody got Purdue, but they got beat last year. I don't get, that's the one thing, and this is really difficult to do. I don't get my heart into it. Like when you're talking about a couple $100, which isn't a ton of money, but still, when I'm doing it and I'm putting money on the line, that's different. Like if you're just trash talking everything, you want to back your team. When you start, this is what I love. When you have to back your team with money and that starts to happen, totally different perspective. So I never homer up. I never homer up in the tournament. Like if I'm putting money on the line, I throw any kind of loyalty. Actually, I'm probably more negative on the teams that I root for because I'm like, ugh, and you see all the flaws and you see all the ugliness. Giants rather cater to casuals and 1%ers who only come in once in a while instead of improving team and generate more season ticket holders. It's hard to argue with that. It's hard to argue with that thought process, especially when I hear what comes out. When it's like, I understand. There's an old adage, right? That what is it? You should be telling the truth. You always shouldn't be telling the truth. Whatever it is. When you have a press conference and you're going to sell 10% of your team, even if you're going to improve Willie Mays Plaza, even if you're going to improve the suites, even if you're going to, I get it. But you don't need to lead with that. Like say, yeah, absolutely. When we're going to do some things to the stadium to make the fan experience better, but we're also going to, we're going to dump some of this money into the baseball operations side, not so we can sign an Aaron Judge to a gazillion-dollar contract, but we're going to make it so that we can draft and develop the next Aaron Judge. That's what I want to hear as a fan. Just engage me a little bit. You can lie straight to my face. I'm okay. I want to be a fan. I want to buy tickets. Just don't constantly be talking about the business side. I get it. It's a business, and you're going to operate it like a business. And you tell us again and again and again how you're going to operate it like a business. But if you want me to spend the money on the ridiculous prices and on the cha-cha bowls and on the beers and all the different things, and I can ignore those things a lot of times once I walk into the ballpark and make it about monopoly money, but don't constantly be telling me that because it's just not, Anyway, I did that yesterday. I don't want to do it again. What else? I think we have covered everything. Episode 92. Golden State bounces back. Dray thinks he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year. Could be. Victor Wembanyama. I wonder if people will still say he's that good, even though he had the injury. Playoff Jimmy. That was good news for the Warriors yesterday. The case for the 49ers. Everybody had been so negative. They do have a few players, especially offensively, still on this team. Brandon Aiyuk, you need to make that big payment on April 1st, but the big story to me would be, is a team going to assume 4 years and $110 million, which is $27.5 million a year, and pay a guy broken down at this point like Brandon Aiyuk? We've mentioned the Patriots or the Browns. Are they that desperate? I would doubt it, but maybe not. I went over the what's left, and there are a few guys on the what's left list. I did that at PFF, ProFootballFocus.com, and there's a number of guys, even though the lights are coming on at 10 a.m., Charles Omenihu is out there. C.J. Mosley is out there. Julian Blackmon is out there. There's a number of guys who could fit into the 49ers and not make them as reliant, quite as reliant. They're still going to be very reliant on the draft, and they have to be. They have to nail this draft. But there are a few guys out there. Would they spend? And it's not a lot of money. It's just that would they spend? I'm not so sure, because it looks like if you're not a special teamer, they're not spending. Robbie Ray was solid. The Bob Melvin contract, as Matt Chapman said in the John Shea piece, he deserves it. Well, if he gets in the playoffs, I think he deserves it. And I love Bob Melvin, but a fourth place finish, you don't deserve a contract extension. Sasaki was wild, but the Dodgers win. No bet madness. How would you respond? We'll talk more about that tomorrow, but that was something that I wanted to bring up today. And need name suggestions. And you can put them in the comments after the show. If you get an epiphany later on in the day and you go, the London Kruger, they should call the Friday Night Baseball Drunken Show this. I just want to know. Nothing better than a $41 crab sandwich. I know, savor the bite. Like cut it into like tiny small pieces, because like if you wolf that thing down really fast, like you haven't eaten all day, and you're like, God, it was $40. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. Sipping and tripping or fly high, drink higher. Yeah, just something fun. I like I said, we're not going to complain about the Giants all season, even if they finish in fourth place. It's going to be a fun place. We want you to come hang out. You'll be able to watch the game at the same time. We're going to have some laughs, have some beers, just like a Manning cast kind of a thing, but just really fun. So loggers with Larry and Lund, that's not bad. Keep them coming, man. Because like I said, I'll try. Last call, not bad. There are no bad ideas here. Bats and beers, not bad, not bad. All right, I'm going to pass these along. Keep them coming. If we're done with the show, which will be in a minute because we've hit our magic mark of a couple of hours, keep those coming, because I need to know. We got to come up with a good, catchy name for the Friday night show. The non-bitching Giants drink beer Friday night show. That's what we're going to do. So, great time had by all today. Again, thank you. I have not checked Instagram. Let me make sure there are no questions, comments, thoughts on there. Very good to see everybody. Good turnout today over on Instagram. Very, very cool. Love it. Hit us up there at John Lund Radio on X. You've been watching on X. We have a few hundred watching on there right now, which is very cool. Bay Area Sports Collective. Make sure that you follow there. That's where Tom's show is, Tom Tober, as well as Polly Mac and Creative Tony. Check it out at Bay Area Sports Collective. Get those alerts on too, because then you'll know when those guys show when they start. We're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m., Saturdays, 10 a.m., and then when news breaks. I also release short videos throughout the day, so make sure your alerts are on so you can hit up on those. And I owe you a written piece today, which I'm excited about. We'll do that at johnlundunleashed.com, so check on that a little bit later. Make sure you're following. Make sure, again, alerts, all those kind of things, John Lund Unleashed for that. Facebook, you can follow me there, John Lund Unleashed. We've got a show page there if you want to. Everything together at johnlundunleashed.com. And hopefully we did not annoy the people too much on LinkedIn. It was the first time that I put the show up on LinkedIn today to just see what it would do. And we'll see. Maybe people will complain and say, look, we're actually trying to do real business here, and people are trying to connect business, and you're just doing jackassery. So don't include us in your stream anymore. We'll see. We'll see what the responses were on this whole thing. All right, let's see. Hey, batter. This is great. Larry and Lund Love Fest. It's not going to be that. It will not be a love fest. We'll find a happy medium. I'm glad, Steve, that you've straightened me out. Yeah, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be a love fest. You're right. It's not going to be that much. Chugs is not bad. Chugs, all right. Very nice. Getting lit with Larry and Lynn. Hi, Antonio. It's good to see you. So good stuff. If you think of anything more, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up at John Lund Radio, those kind of places. All right. I think we have done enough damage for a day. That is episode 92 for March. What are we? March 19th. Tomorrow the tourney starts, baby. March 19th, 2025. However you watch the show today, thank you very much. We will put this up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And if you missed any of the show, never fear. just go over to John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. I will write in the comment section there. I will put the chapters, and then that way you can just click on everything, and you don't have to go through anything or listen to anything or watch anything that you don't want to watch, because we stuck pretty well to the chalkboard today. So there you go. John Lund Unleashed, John Lund on Bay Area Sports Collective. Everyone have a wonderful Wednesday. We'll have some stuff that we put out later today on John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. And then tomorrow we'll talk about the tourney and other things on a Thursday edition of the program. Everybody have a great Wednesday.
Thanks for hanging out with John Lund Unleashed. We'll try to be better next time, though I wouldn't hold my breath. Please like and subscribe on the John Lund Unleashed Pod YouTube channel. Watch live shows weekdays at 8 a.m. on YouTube, Instagram, and X. And make sure to have your alerts on for shows throughout the day or night. All things Lund can be found at johnlundunleashed.com. johnlundunleashed.com.
Goodbye!